Hello, brother. Give me a moment to set up my mic. Hey, what's going on? We're not hearing from you yet. Is something broken on your end? Okay, well, I guess I'll try to start addressing the topic. So I definitely think that stating that human life should not be ended does not have any burden of proof, and stating that it is okay to end a human life does hold a burden of proof. And I would challenge those who are promoting that human life can be ended in the womb before birth. I would challenge you to meet that burden of proof. Yeah, John, there's no audio coming through for you, nor was the graphic, the bubble showing anything either. So, well, Jeremy T., what was your question? I'll do my best to answer it in a naturalistic sort of way. Can we hear you now, John? Do you want to give it a try? Okay, I'll take that as a no. We cannot hear you now, John. So, other John Lang, hello. Killing cells in my leg is not murder. Killing cells in the corpse is not murder. These are not capable of consciousness. Okay, well, I know that many abortions are allowed with up to like 22 weeks, and those are very highly developed baby bodies. I can look up a video real quick. I have it ready as a quick reference that describes a 22-week abortion. I don't know specifically the answer to the consciousness part of that question, but I do know that I will take this as a syllogism, that killing cells in the leg is not murder, killing cells in a corpse is not murder. Well, a corpse is not alive, so we'll write that one off. Now, we also know that in animal life, a human biologically is an animal, and in animal life, I'm not dodging. Just about everywhere up to 22 weeks is legal. So, if you are an activist who is pushing against that, up to 22 weeks, if you're pushing against that as an activist, then you might have some room to talk. But if you're just trying to dodge by pulling it back to 1 month, which is not what happens in real life, a lot of women don't know they're pregnant yet at 1 month. So it would be and then they take time to choose whether or not they're going to have an abortion. So a 1 month abortion would be a very rare circumstance. So you're the one who's dodging, not me. But cells in a leg are not a full individual animal. Yeah, well, you're not thinking logically. Like, you're talking about dead cells, comparing them to an entire living animal. And scientifically, the animal's life begins at conception, talking about that humans are biological animal. Yeah, at 5 months, they definitely have the brain level for some level of consciousness. So I don't think we need to get into that argument. John, I think we're hearing some buzzing from you. It must be your microphone that's not working right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, not you, John Lang. You're good. I was talking to Maddox. I'll say Maddox and John just to keep it clear. I'll try to remember. So Maddox, do you want to try it again? And I'm pulling up this video that I'm going to link. Yeah, John Lang, go ahead and say something you want to say. It looks like...
No, I'm just listening. I'm good.
Okay, because looks like so far I'm the host at the moment, since Maddox hasn't been able to get his microphone to work.
Are you guys just having a discussion about abortion tonight?
Yeah, it's an after show for an abortion debate, and Logical, Plausible, Probable and we are both Christians, and so you can probably easily guess what our stance is on this. And he's very much a debater. He has a debate lined up on MDD tomorrow. I'm not much of an official debater yet, but here, let me see references. because I have it listed in my reference videos. Now, I picked this one because it's straight to the point. This is a real video, because apparently people have not wanted to believe this video, so then they've claimed that it's a fake. But just a few seconds before this, there's an oath and stuff, and I'll need to add that to my references. So, okay, I'm about to screen share it, Maddox, in just one moment. Screen share, including audio. That does mean that I need to adjust my audio levels momentarily here. But yeah, we'll get... yeah, so if there's children around or whatever, you may want to mute for this, because it's a very straightforward description of what this is. And is my screen share is up, so I'm going to go ahead and play this.
First witness is Dr. Anthony Levatino. Dr. Levatino is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. Over the course of his career, Dr. Levatino has practiced obstetrics and gynecology in both private and university settings, including as an associate professor of OBGYN at the Albany Medical College. And Dr. Levatino, we'll begin with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to get right to it. Second trimester D&E abortions performed between roughly 14 and 24 weeks of gestation. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches. And she's been feeling her baby kick for the last several weeks, but she's asleep on an operating room table. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. The business end of this clamp is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. There are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach again, pull again, pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you, and use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart, and lungs. Head in the baby that size is about the size of a large plum. Can't see it, but you pretty good idea you've got it if you've got your instrument around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they go. You know you did it right. You crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you could pull out skull pieces. And you have a day like I had a lot of times. Sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose.
Why did you end your practice of doing abortions?
I did over 1,200 abortions over a 4-year period in private practice, not counting the ones that I did during my training. I met my wife during my first year of training at Albany Medical Center. We got married about a year later and found that we had an infertility problem. After years of failed infertility treatment and several years trying to adopt a child, we were blessed with adopting a little girl that we named Heather in August of 1978. As sometimes happens in those situations, my wife got pregnant the very next month, and we had 2 children 10 months apart. 2 months short of my daughter Heather's 6th birthday, she was killed in an auto accident and literally died in her arms in the back of an ambulance. Anyone who has children might think they have some idea of what that feels like, but unless you've been through it yourself, you have no idea whatsoever. I know people find it hard to believe, but what do you do after disaster? You bury your child and you go back to your life. And I don't remember exactly how long it was after my daughter died that I showed up at Albany Medical Center OR number 9 to perform my first second trimester D&E abortion. I wasn't thinking of it as anything special. This was routine to me. But I reached in, literally pulled out an arm or leg and got sick. You know, earlier on, I described stacking up body parts on the side of the table. It's not to, gross people out, to use a simple term. When you do an abortion, you need to keep inventory. You have to make sure you get 2 arms and 2 legs and all the pieces. If you don't, your patient's going to come back infected, bleeding, or dead. So I soldiered on and finished that abortion. And I know it sounds, as I said, hard for people to believe, but I'm telling you straight up my experience. You know, after over 1,200 abortions, first and second trimester up to 24 weeks and all the rest of it, and being very dedicated to it, for the first time in my life, I really looked. I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't see all the money I just made. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And I stopped doing late-term abortions after that, and several months later stopped doing all abortions.
That's enough to make somebody sick.
Yeah. And then, well, I'll just stop the screen share. I'll put up a new one if I have another one to share. And, well, I will respond to Jeremy T. At 5 months, it's capable of consciousness. Not true. Yeah, I did kind of forget the math on how many weeks that is, because that would be 20 weeks. So I know we're looking at like very much a developed brain and everything. What level of brain activity is quote unquote consciousness? You know, I mean, babies, when they first open their eyes are not very perfect. The brain compensates for flaws in the eyes. And even so, the signals going to the brain take time to organize and stuff. So there's intuitional tendencies to the brain. And so it develops its ability to be intelligent over time. But so how you define consciousness is really up to you. But I would say that there's no burden of proof for saying that a human life cannot be ended, rightly. But there is a burden of proof if you're trying to say that you can end a human life and somehow it's acceptable. And so if you're able to meet your burden of proof, Jeremy T., then that's fine. But if you're willing to take human life without babies, for that matter, the youngest, the voiceless ones who cannot advocate for themselves, who are so young, and you're willing to take their life without meeting the burden of proof, then yeah, I don't think you're thinking logically at that point. It seems like you've just been taught a certain idea that's socially, politically correct. And then going with that is what it seems like to me. Now, there's the link in the side chat to join us here and talk. So if you want to try to meet that burden of proof, I would like the opportunity to show that that burden of proof is not met, so that people who are approving of the killing of these children will stop approving of that killing, and we can have more people on our side to change laws to protect them the way that we protect older people.
Nicholas, are you seeing a chat that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I can see the YouTube chat. If you're on a computer, I've never used a phone for this.
Okay.
Hey, is my microphone working now?
Yes, it is.
Yep,
And I'm glad I didn't.
Lord. Okay, so apparently there's a new beta test going on in StreamYard, and it's defaulting your microphone volume to 0. I'm like, what is happening? I don't understand this. I rebooted my computer and everything. Finally got it to come through. Man, I'm very annoyed. I had a very eloquent opening statement in this whole thing. Running my mouth.
I did sort of like that.
But Nicholas, I really do appreciate you rising to the occasion. I was sitting there watching the video. That was great, man.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to strike with a good emotional precursor before the elegant statement, so maybe it worked out in a good order, and now I'll quiet and you can.
I was being facetious about eloquent opening statement. It was more just running my mouth about different topics. So for everybody who has joined us in the audience right now that wants to come in, the description houses the link to get into the stream. I will put it again into the live chat. So come on into the after show. Tell us about your thoughts about the debate. Who you thought won, lost, best talking points, best counter proposals, and best overall presentation from the debate tonight. And then obviously we'll get into the subject matter at hand. My own personal opinion was I thought that Kay Fellows did a great job. Dr. Burgis, I mean, there were multiple instances throughout that debate where I felt like I was listening to word salad. I mean, it was just like, dude, you have not actually made any actual point other than spewing some very superficial talking points. I mean, his closing statement of, you have this thing in your body and your body expands. Like, really? Like, this is coming from a PhD? Really? This is your argument? Like, that there's something in your body? I mean, we go down so many rabbit holes with that one. I mean, the baby comes from having something inside your body. Let's be blunt. Then that thing expanded to be in your body. So come on.
If I can say about Ben real quick, even for someone who's debating what I would consider to be a losing topic, he was failing really bad. Like Kay was running circles around him and he was like flopping around like a fish. I remember one question, he just like kept going on and on and on and on and not getting to the point. And then when he got to the point, he was just dodging the question. So it was pretty bad. But
well, I agree with you. And to me, when you really begin to contemplate the actual root of the arguments that are put forth by those who are not just superficially, pro-choice, but are actually taking the stance on a public position, right? I mean, how are you going to sit here and have a public debate and potentially influence hundreds, if not thousands of people with your stupid PhD? But then every time you're asked fundamental questions, you do the standard evasion technique by these little activist idiots, from politics to evolution to abortion, whatever it is. Well, I'm not actually an expert. Therefore, I just rely on what they say, but I'm not actually an expert. Well, then what the hell are you doing here?
yeah, and at least
why are you even arguing about this? If you're going to just be like, well, I'm not an expert, then why do you even have an opinion that you're like trying to convince people is the correct one? Then
Can I ask a question on that a little bit?
Sure, go ahead, John.
Well, may I momentarily respond to side chat just real quick, because Jeremy T is saying that this is one-sided. Well, that's what the link is for, so it can become two-sided. So don't be in side chat instead of in the room and then say it's one-sided when we would like you to come in and make it two-sided for us. You are invited. So sorry, John, go ahead.
That's all right.
Yeah, and John Lang, yes, floor is yours.
Yeah, just my question. I've debated people and I've heard them use that argument, say, well, I'm not an expert. I just listen to the experts. Then I say, okay, if I find an expert and he agrees with me, well, then will you agree with him and change your position? And then they say no. So that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, I mean, it was interesting. A couple weeks ago, I had a little interaction with some folks here in Nashville where I live, and I made of course, they were going on this whole tangent about like, late term abortion and such. And I was like, okay, well, so around 1%, somewhere between 1 to 5%, but the low end 1% of the abortions are late term. So that equals somewhere around 10 to 15, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 abortions per year in the United States are late term. That's not an insignificant number. And of course, they spewed all these talking points back. I mean, you don't know anything. You can't back up your claim. You're just, talking point from some right wing, pro-life thing. I'm like, okay, fine. Here's a link to the paper where I got that data from. And it's undisputed information. It's directly from the CDC.
Well, clarifying question. What's being called late term? How many weeks?
Late term is third trimester. I think that's the general. I think that's the general, but usually it's within like the last like 2 months, I think 2.5 months, something like that. But third trimester for sure is late term. But the point I'm making is, I got all this, and I'm just using this as both an anecdote, but also like we observe this everywhere, right? Anytime actual data, real arguments, substantive arguments are presented to the opposition, then it's you're spewing talking points. Then you back it up. You back up your claim, and then they just vanish and have no response, even though you've just completely annihilated their position.
Do you guys actually have much success in convincing certain people who once did subscribe to abortion being good to have them changing their mind?
I don't know how many people do. I mean, I know some do. I mean, in
People-
the way I look at it, only take every individual that is successfully swayed is a victory. I mean,
Yeah.
And people change their mind. They have food for thought and then they chew on it. So I don't think we see much of it. Like Jeremy said, he used to be pro-life, and then he decided it wasn't logical enough, apparently, and switched away from it. So people change their minds. Obviously, it's just a matter of when.
yep. Now we got another.
John, because I find it kind of distracting, like discussing the politics of whether or not what we're saying is relevant. I mean, I guess it's somewhat on topic, but for me, I'd rather focus on the facts of the actual case.
No, I completely agree. And in line with
Do you
that, so
mind-
question mark has just entered. What's your thoughts? Initially, let's keep us on the debate from tonight. What did you think about the conversation over on MDD? Who won, lost, and anything that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep,
We
coming
can,
through great.
yeah.
Yeah, so I found your analysis interesting because I had a different takeaway from it. I found that Ben articulated multiple times Thompson's argument, maybe a little too much, and that his position was clear, but I didn't actually understand the other person. Was it Kate? It seemed to be an appeal to this like a natural should, and that I didn't understand, and I don't think Ben understood it either. So I actually had a different
in that
take on it.
context, I would, if you didn't comprehend it, I'm assuming you or do you lean towards subjective or objective morality?
I don't know.
I mean, is something wrong or right?
Yeah, I think things could be wrong.
Okay, so if in the context of this debate, if the fetus is actually human, is it always wrong to kill it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so in what context would in any other context? So, baby has left womb. Is it now acceptable to kill it in any context?
I feel like now we're debating abortion, but I was trying to give.
Well, I mean, what the hell was the whole topic of the debate tonight, and the whole reason that we're having this after show?
Oh, well, I thought it was to talk about the show.
To talk about the debate that just happened. What was the topic of it?
It was abortion. Okay.
Okay.
I think,
So if a baby is removed from if the mother has the child or she has a cesarean section, and after that somebody decides to slit the baby's throat.
Yeah.
Is that moral or immoral?
Yeah, I think we're coming at it in two different ways.
I'm setting a context. Is it moral or immoral to slice the throat of a baby once it has left the mother's womb, whether through cesarean or vaginally?
But okay, so like
Simple
you're familiar
question.
with-
Simple
but you're
question.
familiar- Okay.
Simple
I don't
question.
think this is an honest conversation.
Well, hold on, question mark. If I may say, if
that's
I may
okay.
moderate,
I'll listen
between
to
you two real
on
quick.
YouTube.
It is honest. The point is to oh, he left. Yeah, the point is to start by establishing some common ground and then ask why there's differences between one thing and another, etc., and to delve into the topic. If I may, Maddox, real quick, I do have a piece that I think Kay missed because her natural should or ought. The way I present that naturalistically, and since there's no need to really convince Christians on the topic, I do resort to naturalistic discussions on this topic because it's important enough that I'm not waiting until after someone's a Christian to really get to this topic, you know?
How
But,
exactly would you do that, Nicholas?
What?
How exactly would you be able to do that?
Well, you're interrupting what I'm in the middle of.
Okay,
But yeah,
apologize.
John Lang, I mean, before you ask those kinds of probing questions, that they feel a little bit trollish. I'm not trying to characterize you, but I would like to know if you have a specific position. But first, let me finish this real quick because it's a
Okay.
response to the llama that was just here. I didn't memorize his screen name, but what Kay
Question
missed.
mark.
Question mark. Okay, and what I think that's why he didn't want to answer any questions, maybe. But what Kay missed, I think, is that we have all come into existence through this natural process. And so foundationally, it's a logical stretch to then resent the process or to, you know, like saying that when the woman makes a choice that allows her to become pregnant and then she's going to not take responsibility for that choice. The natural thing is that she knew better beforehand, but also she has benefited from the same process. So yeah, so that's what gives, in a vacuum, that's what gives weight to Kay's position instead of Ben's and puts the burden of proof on his side. And I think when you're talking about ending a human life, then the burden of proof is on the side of trying to justify ending it. It's not on the burden of proof is not on the side of saying that human life is valuable and to not be ended. So yeah, that's how I would reconcile all that. But John, I'll call you Maddox, by the way. So John, do you mind telling us what your perspective is?
Yeah, sure, I can share. I'm a Christian. I'm very, very pro-life. I was actually, I could have misunderstood what you're saying. I thought that maybe your premise was under just naturalistic materialism and not presupposing that God exists, being the moral arbiter. Were you arguing from that framework that you're presupposing there was no God?
Well, not that I personally presuppose that, but that I'm arguing that even if someone does not have the presupposition or the confidence of God, that even in their worldview, they still need to meet a burden of proof, or else they are refuting themselves.
I see what you're saying. You're just saying that their parents chose to keep them alive and they owe that same to their offspring. Is that what you're saying?
What I was specifically saying was trying to address the merit to the natural ought that Kay was expressing, that she never described really any kind of merit to it.
Okay.
And then I brought that back around to the burden of proof being on the side of ending a human life instead of on the side of not ending a human life.
Okay. I'm not really that familiar with it, so I'm going to have to probably just keep most of my thoughts to myself until I kind of get educated on the topic.
Well, no, with that, so we've got Tony P. Tango. So I think he joins us from Australia, I believe. So, Tony, are you drunk or sober for this interaction?
Well, I take that as a drunk.
Tony, are you alive?
You might be having the microphone problem you had. So it might be that StreamYard has somehow automatically, Tony, set your volumes to 0 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Tony, that I had to go. I finally found it in the when I entered the studio and went to settings. Then I saw that there was a new beta test, and it had my mic volume at 0, even though it was active. It was on mute. For all intents and purposes, it was still on mute. Just didn't show it. But yeah, a big portion of this whole conversation, this whole topic that just drives me up the wall is the baby is a leech. It's, this appendage, that's drawing, it's a parasite that's drawing on the mother. And I'm like, if you want to apply that logic, you could extrapolate that out to after the child was born. I mean, is the baby going to survive without its mother or father or some other adult human? Or I didn't say adult, but another autonomous human being being able to take care of that baby after it's born? And obviously the answer is, unless there's some additional factor, intelligent agency that's going to be able to come in and feed the baby, right? It's not going to survive. Like, that is a fact. So to argue that because the same premise applies prior to its birth, to me, is a non-starter, and it just completely suspends rationality. And I mean, so is it, if the baby is nursing, is it still a parasite? I mean, it's like people suspend rational thought in this whole conversation. And, oh, it's part of the mother's body. Really? Is it? I mean, I'm pretty sure that recombination of DNA would directly destroy that argument. I mean, it's now from literal formation of the zygote. It is now no longer genetically part of the mother or the father. It's now a completely new entity from a genetic information perspective. And given the fact that the most strong advocates of abortion are also very strong advocates for, not all, I'm just saying in general, are advocates for evolutionary theory, then since that's the ultimate foundation of their worldview, I don't understand how you would not apply that same fundamental component to what is a fetus in terms of same, different, new next generation. I mean, the whole premise of evolution is dependent on next generation information processing and transfer. So, I mean, if that's when that whole process takes place, is at conception, in my opinion, if you're going to believe in evolution, then you have no leg to stand on. But that's just me.
I would also like to mention that some people they drew analogy to, like, if someone was attached to me, and then would I not have the right to detach them from me? Or would I be obligated to let them remain attached to me? And then there's a question, well, what if I attached them to me according to my own free will? No, like, let's say I rolled a 6-sided die, and I knew that if I rolled a 6, a person would be attached to me. Like, it's not a perfect chance, but I know about the possibility. And then I had the free will to take that risk or not. And the person who was attached to me and became dependent on me has absolutely no choice in the matter. And it was all because of my choice. Now, I mean, am I allowed to put a bullet in their head after attaching them to me in order to detach them from me when it was all my own fault and not their fault at all? So, I mean, a lot of these arguments that pro-choice uses, really quick on the face of them, they just fall apart. And I'll answer Zambi's question here. I think it's maybe pretty off topic, but if you're married and your partner is struck down by some disease that makes them incapacitated, should you be obligated to look after them for life? Now, that depends on what marriage means to you. But in my belief system, when I commit to that marriage, that sort of thing is very much in line with exactly why one would commit to a marriage, so that when things like that happen, you have someone. And so I would be very much obligated. Anyway, just participating with chat.
I think that was gone into great detail. You guys ever seen that video, The Violinist?
I may have. What's the context?
It's just what Nicholas was saying, something about how, oh, it's a 20-minute video on YouTube. If you woke up from a coma one day and there was someone next to you that, you know, you had the only blood in the whole world that would, you know, fit in this person and whatnot, and would you have a right to, you know, say, I don't want to do it, let that person die?
Did you see it on Matt Frad's channel?
I really don't
perchance?
remember. It was several months ago. At this point in time, I can't say. I just, a lot of these things when I'm
Well-
at work, I'll throw on a YouTube video, put my phone in my pocket, and listen to it. So I don't even usually get to see a lot of the video.
Now, this woman, Stephanie Gray, is incredibly expert at handling these arguments. So I was just looking her up so that I
think
can
that
like
might be
reference her
her.
and stuff. And actually, Matt Frad hosted a debate with her on this topic just 2 weeks ago. So I haven't been keeping up with Matt Frad's channel, and I missed that. So maybe I'll do a watch party for that on my channel sometime soon or something, because I'm sure she did an excellent job. And
Nephilim
guys.
Free, welcome to the stream, man. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, fellas?
hello, Neff.
Hey,
Hello,
Did you,
Neff. Glad to be here.
Did you catch
you.
the
Good to see you.
debate on over on MDD?
no, I didn't get it. Which debate was it?
It was Ben Burgis versus Kay Fellows. They were discussing. They were debating abortion.
Oh, I saw it. I didn't watch it. Debating abortion is not something that I really don't get into watching debates about abortion. I don't know why. It's just a subject that doesn't interest me. It's an important subject, you know, and I think abortion is wrong, but I just don't, for some reason, have patience to listen to people say it's not wrong to murder an unborn child. It just gets under my skin.
Well, to me, one of the fundamental hypocrisies is if it is not, and this is Burgess was kind of arguing this back and forth tonight of, should, the legal protections apply and all that kind of stuff, right? And he used to get into crazy stuff like, right to inhabit the body. Like, oh, good grief, man. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, if I crack and I go nuts, can I like sue my own consciousness for somehow forcing itself into my physical body? Like, I mean, we with the way things are going in modern society, like you could probably make that argument in a freaking court of law these days and get taken seriously. I identify as a person who doesn't actually have a physical body, and I think that my consciousness is invading it. I mean, you come up with all stupid crap like that. But my point is that the fact that these kinds of arguments are going to be made, but then at the same time, I'm sure there's some, but very few normal humans are going to claim that, if somebody comes up and starts stabbing a woman in her uterus with the express purpose of killing the baby inside of her, like that person is going to be charged with murder. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, and nobody thinks.
Yeah, it's double homicide. Yeah.
Right. It's even if the mother doesn't die, it's homicide. If the baby does, like
Right.
nobody questions that even for a second. Like, well, of course
Right.
that's murder. I mean,
Isn't that ironic? Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it?
And I'm like, so how does it? Okay, so they inserted the sharp object through her skin. The doctor inserted the sharp object up her vagina into her uterus. What's your point on the difference? I mean, just because the doctor is not going to face criminal charges doesn't change the action that results in the death of the baby.
I think it boils down to it's a matter of respecting or disrespecting the spirit and seeing human beings as material objects. While people who have abortions may or may not be philosophical materialists, like atheism is bound to, nonetheless, it is a view that abortion is not wrong, is a view that is so akin to philosophical materialism, because it posits that an unborn child is really just a complexly, a growing complexity of matter is really all it is. And it disregards the spirit, because if you kill an unborn child, you're sending a spirit to the grave when God put that spirit into that flesh for the purpose of bringing it into the world. So it really disregards the value of the human spirit and the intentions of God, and has a materialistic flavor to it.
The spirit.
And I completely agree with that, Neff. My only thing is that those of us who respect the spirit are already against abortion. So for those who are not going to be respecting the existence of spirit soon, I also would like them to be against abortion. So on this topic, I do what would be called internal critique and try to stick with what will matter to them to make a difference to the cause, the specific cause. Now, what I have here is an argument. We all agree that toddlers are valuable human beings with rights, yet the unborn differ from toddlers in only 4 ways. So we'll see if people inside chat can say a different way in which preborn children differ from toddlers. But this is the argument, is that there's only 4 ways they differ from toddlers. And one is size, another is level of development, another is environment, and another is degree of dependency. So I'll go ahead and read the rest of what's here. Here's how to use the SLED, that's the acronym: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. Here's how to use the SLED test with a technique I like to call trotting out the toddler. So actually, I don't know if this might have been read by the same woman I mentioned, or maybe she was referencing the same person, because that sounds very familiar to me. So the unborn is smaller than the toddler, but toddlers are smaller than adults. The unborn is less developed than the toddler, but toddlers are less developed than elementary school kids. The unborn is in a different location than the toddler, but toddlers can change environments without changing their value. And then finally, the unborn is more dependent than a toddler, but toddlers are more dependent than adolescents, even if some parents would deny this. And many other born people depend on medications, caregivers, and spacesuits to sustain their lives. They are more dependent than those who don't need these things. I don't think
everybody in the International Space Station is now a fetus. On the outside of planet Earth perspective. Okay, Tony has made it back in. Tony, you want to do a quick mic check while we're...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you coming through. So you're how's everything going on down under?
Yeah, pretty good. Not too bad. It's only about 3:42 in the afternoon here, so ready and raring to go.
Well, that's good. So what are your did you check out the debate over on MDD?
No, I just missed it, but I'm actually pro-life. I'm not going to say I'm 100% against abortion, but I do think that it really is a last sort of a last choice. You know what I mean? I'm actually, if there's any other choice, let's not abort the baby. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Tony, how can we get you the rest of the way there?
You'd have to make him not an atheist, probably.
Sorry?
Hey, Tony, you probably have to convert him to theism.
No, not really. Because, I mean, honestly, I used to be, I used to have no thoughts one way or the other, but then, you have a child, I've got a daughter now, and it just changed your whole perspective on like babies and, you know, when you see them on like ultrasound moving around and, you know, sucking their thumbs and all that sort of thing while they're still in the womb, you sort of, you think abortion really isn't the go.
Well, and you really have to think about. I mean, you're making a very solid point there, and especially now with some like the 3D ultrasounds and stuff they're able to do now. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's like looking at a photograph or like video in real time. It's amazing. The old school ultrasound. I mean, that's the commonality now, but you can get crazy detailed 3D scans and such now.
Yeah, well, you know, ours was in color and everything. It was great. But, you know, and that's why I sort of, you know how you got the pro-choice people? I hate how they sort of say, well, it's my body and I can do with, you know, whatever I want with it. Well, it's not really just your body, is it? It's the other person inside you as well. Does that make sense?
Well, of course it does, but they try to claim that premise doesn't apply. But here's the thing about that, bud. It's very blunt and direct, but it's like, okay, so prior to the formation of the zygote, the fertilization of the egg, when the man you had sex with ejaculated, is all the sperm that's swimming around inside of you, is that now part of your body or not?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And if it's not, and then then it fuses with a part of your body, but then it creates something that's not part of your body. I mean, it's in your body, but it's now a separate entity. Just like the sperm cell that was swimming around inside you it was in you, but it was not you.
Exactly.
I had not heard that one before.
I mean, does that logic make sense?
Yeah.
Well, and to me, when you think about it, like you have in the sex cells, you have half of a genome in the egg and half of the male genome in the sperm. They join, there's DNA recombination, and now it is a completely new genome. So at no point is it just mother or just father.
Exactly.
Because until that unison happens, it's neither, right? It's a sperm cell swimming around and an egg. That's it. Nothing's happened until the moment of truth. And then once that happens, if you're going to try and argue that, because the recombination happens, you don't even know that it's happened yet. Like that happened way before you even had an idea that you were pregnant. Way before. And that's happening within minutes, right? And with hours, you're having full scale recombination, and you're getting into, the different proteins in this new zygote are literally erasing all the epigenetic aspects and methylation, DNA methylation that's happened on the father and the mother's portion of the genome. And while that recombination is happening, literally all of that information is being erased. And it's like a full scale reboot into a new organism. To me, when you really contemplate that whole aspect, and this is all happening within the equivalent blink of an eye, and way before you know you're pregnant. It's like, get out of here. All this stuff already happened before you even know about it. Now you're going to claim that, it's part of my body. No, it's not. All of the things that make it not part of your body happened before you even knew that it existed.
Exactly.
Your argument is invalid, in my opinion. And then for them to get into this whole, Burgess going on this whole thing about whoever it was, scratching leg and your leg cells and all this kind of it's like, are you this ignorant of the biology to even go down these rabbit holes? To me, it's pathetic. It's like, okay, if somebody is a quote unquote, if you have a PhD and you're dumb enough to make that argument, you're an ignorant fool, and you shouldn't even be allowed to have conversations about this as a expert in any topic if you're dumb enough to buy into that one.
Was that the way he was sort of leaning? Was he in the debate, or?
Nicholas, who brought that up? Because that whole concept was discussed in the debate.
I don't know if it was in the debate. Jeremy T in side chat definitely brought it up. But partway
No,
through the
I could
debate,
have sworn like they talked about that concept in the debate, though. Or maybe it was like a question or something in the Q&A section. I forget. I remember being discussed.
yeah, I think it was a question in the Q&A, and Jeremy T asked it in the Q&A at the debate, and then when he came in here, he said that it had not been answered. So I offered to address it, and that's what I was doing while your mic wasn't working.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, because that whole thing, it's like, I don't even know how to respond to that kind of stuff other than just, you don't have enough. If you're actually making that, if you actually bring that forth as some kind of an actual valid argument, then I don't think you have the IQ points necessary to have the conversation.
The claim that the fetus is a part of the woman's body and she therefore has a right to do with it what she wants to because it's her body is also false for another reason, because the circulatory system of the fetus is not connected directly to the circulatory system of the mother. The blood of the mother doesn't pass into the body of the baby, developing child. The nutrients are gathered from the mother's bloodstream by an amazing process of molecules, molecular machinery, proteins that transport whatever is in the bloodstream of the mother through a membrane into the bloodstream of the baby. So there are no shared blood cells in between baby and mother. And, and a baby can have a different blood type from its mother. So this kind of throws a wrench in the claim that it's part of her body. It's already got it's a separate organism. It has a separate circulatory system.
Stephanie Gray addresses this even further with the fact that a woman's uterus is not for her, but it is for children, in that a woman can survive with 0 uteruses, unlike if you have 0 kidneys, you can't survive, for instance, But she can survive without her uterus, but her child cannot survive without her uterus. So anytime we look at any kind of natural implications and use reasoning from there, we always end up on this same, we can call it pro-life, but I would even go as far as like anti-abortion. So that's what I would like to ask you, Tony, is like, you say that you are pro-life, but are you pro legislation that prevents women from choosing to have abortions?
No, I'm not. For the reason that as soon as you start legislating against stuff like that, you can't control it. Women have always been having abortions, and what they'll do is they'll go to Mother Mary, who has an abortion clinic in her garage, and do it a really horrible way, and they'll be late-term abortions.
Well, what I would push back on that is like, we can't prevent murder either. And then you didn't make this case, but some people make the case that women will harm themselves trying to do the abortion themselves and stuff. And from what we saw, that's obviously true. He said that like there can be huge consequences or even death if he didn't get every shard of the skull, of the baby's skull, out of the mother's uterus. When we watched the testimony from an abortion doctor earlier. So, but the thing is that an adult could go to murder another adult and we can't prevent it, and they could get killed in the process of trying to murder that other adult. So I don't see how the inability to legislate or the risk for someone who's trying to commit one of these killings, I don't see how that really factors in. To me, murder is illegal, and that's...
You'd be happy to just just create legislation that would put women in jail for murder.
Well, yeah, I would, if they're going to murder their child and say that it's because they chose to take the risk of having the child growing in their womb. If they can't be responsible adults and they're going to put that responsibility onto a child by murdering the child, then yeah, that's a punishable offense for sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really thinking of the mothers at this stage. I'm just thinking at the moment we have a certain amount of control, and you can say, right, if the baby's this developed, you can't have an abortion. And I know that there's, depending on where you live and what state and all that sort of thing, that might change. But if you put make something go underground, then that's all goes out the window. You know, it'd just be horrendous.
Well,
Tony,
you know,
can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
Would you agree that there's, despite many laws against sex trafficking and kidnapping, that it still goes on in the world in quite a few places?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, would it stand to reason then that even though there's laws prohibiting it, with your argument, wouldn't it be better just to make it legal?
No, I think because once again we're getting into an area where we're infringing on another human's right to exist, almost, aren't we?
Well, if you could just go back to the analogy I made. I mean, you said that if it becomes illegal, women are just going to go to, back alley abortions and whatnot. But
yeah,
if kidnapping and sex trafficking is illegal right now, and people who do engage in it, we would put them in jail. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
In my opinion, that'd be a good thing.
That would be a good thing. So why can't we make that parallel come over to abortion? The women that would engage in that would go to jail the same way that sex traffickers would go to jail because it's illegal.
Well, I just think it would create more problems than it would solve. And it's sort of like I've got this really wild idea that drugs should be legal. Just legalize the whole lot. And that way you'll have it come out in the open and you won't get all these dodgy drugs, where somebody's making this really horrible smack in their bathtub and all that sort of stuff. All that stuff will disappear and we'll have control over it. And there won't be so many deaths and the economy of Colombia would collapse. So I'm of a mind that as soon as you start legislating against things, or imagine if you legislated against pornography was illegal, what would happen then?
Well, I don't really want to equate to killing people to pornography. That's
that would be something that you're doing to yourself, not to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it would just go underground.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second. This logic. The current estimates are there's about somewhere between 45 and 52 million abortions per year globally. Do you actually think if it was no longer legal that somehow there would still be 50 million abortions a year?
No,
do you think magically those would all just go to this underground black market?
No, you're convincing me. Actually, no. I think you're right. If perhaps we did create a certain amount of legislation, but you'd have to put in place easier adoption.
I would agree with you 100% on that. I mean, I don't know how it is in Australia, but here in the United States, they have made adoption such a convoluted and expensive process that and I don't know how it's down there in Australia, but I'm guessing you're a quote unquote relative quote unquote Western society, right? I'm assuming you probably have similar annoyingly complex hoops that have to be jumped through to do something as simple as helping to save another human's life and providing a basic upbringing. And I mean, it was so bad, and it opened up somewhat to a little bit here in the States over the last 5 or 6 years. But there for a while, people were literally, it was easier to go to another country and adopt a child than it was to adopt inside of the United States. And when you think about that, in terms of the how do you expect to have reasonable mitigation of abortions through adoption if you put so much red tape that blocks people from being able to adopt children? And what really gets me is that, and I'm not going to quote numbers because it's been a couple years since I read this stuff, but there's been studies on how there's more people who can't have children and all that kind of stuff that would like to adopt and can't here in the United States. because of the complexity, then basically the supply of potential children is greater than the ability for people to, the demand for children is greater than the supply, even though when you think about the number of children that are aborted, in theory, the supply of potential children for adoption should be massively greater than the demand.
Yeah.
And again, when you put it in the context of, wait a minute, there's 50 million babies aborted per year on a global level. Per year. I mean, think about that. That is just a complete, like, I don't think the average human can really contemplate that. Like, we can't, I mean, we hear the numbers of like the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, and we like view this as one of the most, horrific genocides of all time, right? And yet we are destroying, what is that, give or take, what, like 8, let's just for easy math, let's say 8x the number of babies are born or aborted per year than Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
And since Roe v. Wade, I mean, this is just the way they draw the line for the statistics so often. There's plenty of abortions before that. But in the United States, the number of abortions is almost as much as the population of the United States is today. And somewhere in the vicinity of 300,000 or 300 million. I didn't memorize the number, but.
Well, and one of the things that really gets me fired up is this in context of minorities and low income individuals, specifically in the minorities. If you go and look at the data, here in the United States, as an example, the African American community in 1950 was like 9%, right? Fast forward to now, and it's like 13.1%. Okay. However, in many states, there's literally more black babies being aborted than born. Anyway, you think about this now do a comparison to like the Hispanic community. So back 1950, they were like 7% of the population. Now they're 17% of the population. So how did, in the exact same amount of time, did a smaller percentage gain, not just catch up, but significantly pass another demographic when when you just look at the baseline data, gigantic percentages of African American kids were aborted. Hispanic kids were not. Now they're a much smaller minority than the African American community. Like, this is not rocket. This is like basic math. And that's just when you factor in what the percentages would be, even if the kids that were aborted didn't have their own kids, right? We're talking about if just the babies survived. When you look at the percentage growth, and to me, when you really start to think about those numbers, and then look at, hey, who is pushing these policies? Why are we convincing minority? Like, why are political groups convincing minorities that they should abort their kids, and then have them keep looking for and like dangling these carrots to try, we're going to help you get out of being a subjugated minority, as we literally convince you to abort your next generation. It sickens me.
And we see that Margaret Sanger's scheme from the get-go has been really followed through with and successful. The whole eugenics thing, which was the reason that Planned Parenthood was established.
Absolutely. And then now it's gone even beyond that in the context of the globalists, futurist eugenicists who, what's their view in the pillars in Georgia? I think it's they want no more than 300 million people on the entire
billion or billion
on the planet, right?
It's either a billion or $500 million.
Let's look that up. But it's like they want to basically commit genocide on the vast majority of the planet. Not like, oh, this little segment. Like, no, let's just like kill like basically everybody. And I mean, it's mind blowing. Let's see what that is.
Yeah, I'll bring up another question from side chat. Bring those folks in here real quick. Boaz Manyara was asking me this question, and I have the response to it now, even though I was just saying I'm not sure how it applies. So the question is, Nicholas, by that metric, wouldn't the process of death itself be argued in the same way as pregnancy? So this was when I was saying that we all have gotten here and have benefited from the pregnancy process. So then for someone to willfully risk pregnancy and then in order to advert the result of the risk that they knew to then kill a person in order to remove the consequences, it does not stand logically that that is ethical, just from a naturalistic standpoint, for one to benefit from something and then feel entitled to kill someone in order to prevent it. I don't think people generally consider death to be a benefit, so I don't think that the whole concept of death comes into this argument at all. Boaz?
Oh man, John Lang, did you have? I saw you went off mute. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, nothing.
Okay. Chris Keith has entered the after show. What's up, man? How you doing?
Shalom. How y'all doing tonight?
Hey, Chris.
Hey,
Shalom.
Neff. Did you get some rest last night?
Yeah.
Pretty late.
Yeah, I did.
Good deal. No, I just came in. It's good to see Maddox doing the stream. I saw this is an after show off the debate that on abortion. Is that what I'm correct on that?
Yeah, they had the Ben Burgis and Kay Fellows debated abortion over on MDD.
Okay, yeah, I didn't catch that, but
the last two top debates on this topic I did an after show for because I feel it's an important responsibility that we do that when we have the opportunity that the topic is brought up, that we do our best to enlighten true values and advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. And I really didn't want to push myself into doing a live stream tonight, so I really appreciate, Maddox, that you did it and I could just come participate. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, this is one for me that it's too important of a topic. You know, like as you guys all know, I love doing after shows on other topics and getting into crazy debates and all that kind of stuff. But you know, a lot of those things, yes, they have fundamental importance from a macro view and existential perspective and all that kind of stuff. But to me, you know, the debate question or the abortion question is a real world, here and now, important, and every moment, literally, lives hang in the balance.
And I've been waiting a little while to answer a couple questions from Zambiz Kid that I found in the side chat. I'd like to address those.
Yeah, go for it.
He says, for those that call it murder, if an operation could be performed to remove the fetus intact from the mother onto the operating table, would that then be okay? I do not think that is okay, in the sense that once one chooses to partake in that which engages parenthood, that is, sex is the beginning of parenthood, because you know that you might be a parent as a result. So then if you choose to engage in that, and then once your child exists because of what you've done to no fault of the child, then it would be abusive to remove them from their healthy, rightful place and then put them on an operating table and survive them from machinery and stuff from there on. So it would not be murder, but it would still be, you know, I mean, we have laws about neglect and child abuse and stuff, and it still falls into those categories. Now, he said down here, I don't care about something until it can care for itself. It has no rights in my moral system. Someone responded to him and he corrected himself. Well, okay, I made a mistake above. I mean, until it is autonomous. Now, this bodily autonomy argument, it really, I find it rather despicable, and here is why. Because we're talking about autonomy, like dependency, which we went over with the sled thing earlier. But what about bodily rights? Like, how is it that somehow the child in the womb supposedly has no bodily rights? And then we're going to equate. Now, the reason they use the word autonomy is so that, and technically they are autonomous because LPP was explaining the science behind it very accurately, and Nephilim Free also explained it very accurately. They are in that location and they need that incubating location, but their life is autonomous from the mother's life. They're not like attached. They're not attached in a life sharing way.
And quick interjection on that. There's different diseases and disorders where, because it literally is a separate entity, the mother's immune system views it as an invader and literally tries to kill it if there's not the appropriate recognition factors or misexpression of those proteins. And it's like, okay, at what point, if the mother's system, if these errors are in place and there's not these like authentication codes that say, hey, immune system of mother, this is actually okay for right now to be here. Like, if that's removed from the equation, it's now an enemy. Like, how do you come to that the conclusion that does not directly act as proof that it is a separate component?
Yeah, so they're not actually talking about autonomy because the child is autonomous. They're talking about dependency, and then they would have to also be okay with killing breastfeeding children, killing toddlers. So you would have to take that to its logical conclusion if you actually believe that. But even so, even if you are going to argue that they're not autonomous, that's not an argument that they don't have bodily rights. And as far as like women's rights, well, we should call that females' rights and human rights, actually, but it just happens that these things only like matter to females, but a female in the womb deserves those rights also. And so do boys in the womb, males in the womb. So all of this, it just comes down to nonsense as far as I can tell. Now, Zambi's kid, if you want to come in here, we'll be very cordial and hear you out a lot. But I'm not finding any strength to what you said. And I see that interacting with the comment section, it seemed there's like 24 new comments now. So I'll see what else comes up.
I had something maybe I might could pose if I got just a second. I sometimes bring up, a lot of times I bring up the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, and where that recognizes a federal law, which recognizes that if you take the life, they consider it a victim, but they also in the law, they describe it as the victim as a member of the species Homo sapien. So if you take that life, the commission of a crime, and you can be charged with murder. So like, let's say you kill the famous case of Scott Peterson and Lacey Peterson, killing that baby. That's where the law comes from. And so there's specifically in that law a provision that that does not allow for the prosecution of, let's say, of a mother that wants to kill her or to terminate her pregnancy, every which way you want to view it. And they're worried that maybe that some people want to, like in Texas, I think you saw that, where they're trying to push maybe for that to be on the books. What would you feel about that, Nicholas? I know it's a tough question. I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything. I was reviewing side chat for a moment there. Oh, sorry. No, it's okay.
Someone, so I missed it.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, because
or if anybody else heard it and may have thoughts on it, because I'm
If you
kind
could
of
sum it up real quick. I heard the part
Well-
about laws in Texas, but
well, basically, there's break it down to say let's just say there is a law that is federal though that charges someone, and even if it's in utero or the embryo, it recognizes it, but it specifically says victim, so it doesn't say person, but it also does define that as a member of the whole species Homo sapien, so that it does define it as a, because they always say, you know, there's no law that says it's a person, but that right there defines it as a member of the species Homo sapien, defines it as a person. So a lot of people are there is, like I said, there is a provision in there to stop where you can't charge a mother. You know, it has to be, you know, it has to be somebody else, you know, doing that. So you can't charge a mother that terminates a pregnancy with murder. But and I think in Texas they push for a law to make it illegal, or that you can maybe charge the mother with a crime in that according to that law, but not necessarily citing that law. But I mean, if you're going off the, you know, if you're following my logic, how would you feel?
Yeah.
How would you feel about if they made it a law where it was illegal like that? Would you be in support or not support of that law?
I consider it already illegal because murder is illegal, and
Right.
so I don't consider the idea that doing it in the womb can somehow. I don't consider it possible to write into law to consider it not murder at that point, because then it's just nonsense that's not acknowledging the facts. So as far as I'm concerned, it already is illegal, and the courts are just being illegal.
Yeah, because it's very much a contradiction. That's why I bring it up. So, because every time I bring it up, they automatically say, "Well, then are you for? Then you must be for, you know, charging women that have abortions with murder." And
Yeah,
you know,
I definitely am.
okay, which I think I agree with you. I think it is, if you terminate a pregnancy like that, it is taking of a life. But when in respect to the mother, I think that, I don't know. I right now I might change my mind on it. Just thinking about it, that it's definitely wrong, but the mother has to live with that choice, and she has to answer to God for that. So in that situation,
Hey, real quick, I know John Lang has to. He's got to bounce.
Go ahead,
John. Do you have any?
Oh, he
I
bounced.
guess he
Sorry.
left. I was giving him a chance to give any final words, but okay. Yeah, floor is yours again.
That's fine. Well, I was just leaning like, because I mean, it's just a slippery slope, but it's not really a slippery slope. It's just a slope. Excuse me. It's just the fact that you're going to get so much pushback on it that I don't want it to like get the law that's already on the book, the federal law. I like that law to become state laws too. You know, in every state, that if you take a life of a woman, or do something to cause the termination of her pregnancy, you should be charged with murder. So that's my big thing.
What about the woman who's raped?
I'm sorry?
What about the woman who's raped?
Raped?
Hey guys,
I'm from the South.
Give John a moment first.
Hey guys, hang on before we go down that path. John, hey, so you're back, man. Do you have anything you want to say before you head out?
No, I'm just kind of observing here, learning a ton from you guys, and if you can allow me, I'd like to try to get back in on these conversations in the future. It seems like you're kind of doing them on Saturday nights mostly.
I am very random lately. I've been, when there's random debates and stuff, I've been jumping into after shows and stuff. I used to do a lot more stuff, and I will here again soon. But yeah, you're always welcome on my streams, and yeah, always looking for other folks to come in, share thoughts, and engage, and help to spread basic common sense in a general sense, as well as obviously the good news of the gospel, and help people have greater understanding of existence and all the other fun things that come along with that.
Okay,
And then
well,
my channel's not as much open mics and stuff. I don't know if I'll be getting into that more, but Chris Keith does that. Chris Keith, if you would put your link in the
Sure,
private chat
private
or the
chat,
side
yeah.
chat or whatever.
I have
And
live streams
presume
every
you're-
weekend myself, John.
Yeah, I was
You
going to
might
say
want to join those too.
Neff does a lot of weekend streams. If you're looking for somebody that does some weekend streams that you're
Okay.
kind of interested, definitely Neff. I really love participating in his. I got to last night and I enjoyed it very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and
it's good to be here. I just
well,
I'd
I
like
also
to add
put in.
something. I'd like to
I
add
also
something
put in the
having-
side chat, John. Our friend Smokey Saint does a lot of live streams, and well, not everyone's friends with him, but I definitely am, and some of us definitely are. But
And Nicholas, are you still doing some? I know you off and on. You've been doing some more detailed streams too, haven't you?
yeah, John. Hopefully, John can still hear us, because it would still be good if John subscribed to my channel, just so that whatever I do offer, he can do. I'm going to start another channel soon that's not focused on this community, but is a general Bible study type of channel.
Yeah, that's
And,
what I knew you've been, because you've done some tests of that concept on your current channel, haven't you? I know you've been talking about wanting to do that in much more detail, but I know you've been doing some along that line, haven't you?
along the lines of Bible study. I've done a couple things on my channel, but a lot of it's been cordial conversations with atheists, and
What
I've
was
done
that
a lot
you
of
were
polemics
doing
on
with
my
that?
channel. Really, actually, I've done a good amount of polemics.
Yeah, who was the man? I'm having a brain freeze. Who was the atheist that Smokey and I debated that you
Yeah,
had?
Matthew Steele.
Yeah, there we go, Matthew Steele. Yeah.
Yes, I've yeah, so I got some good stuff on my channel, and then being on that would have someone ready for when my new channel comes out. I'm going to name it Just Trust Messiah. So that's coming up.
That'd be a good name, Nicholas. Perfect for you. Mm-hmm.
And did you provide your link yet?
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm sorry. I was thinking
Okay,
about.
well, I'll just
thinking
do
about
it real
phone.
quick. I can.
Thank
have
you
it
for me. You always do that. Thank you. I was
Couple
thinking my
seconds.
phone up. I was in another. I have 2 Gmail accounts, so I had to closing out my phone. But if you could do that, it'd be great. If you put it in side chat for me, to save me time. Thank you.
Yeah, because yeah, Nephilim. I don't know how often you do more biblical topics and things. So Nephilim Free's channel is more focused on creationism.
Well, I do biblical stuff sometimes, but I do more about creation evolution than anything. That's true.
And the reason I provide Chris Keith's link is because with his channel name, it's very hard to find him without a link.
Yeah, it is.
That's why I'm not providing the link for the rest of us, because with our names, we're easy to find. Yeah, so that's enough of the promotion and stuff. I don't know if John
Thank
was
you,
around
Nicholas.
to be
Appreciate it.
able to catch all that. But yeah,
By the
that's
way,
that.
quick sidebar, Chris. I have given you a wrench, haven't I?
I thought you did. Let me look over to my phone. And
Just
see
just say something in chat real quick, and I'll be able to tell.
Okay. I'm gonna go over to my phone. I usually chat my phone while I have it pulled up, so I don't have to open up another tab. But let me just open up another tab up here real quick. Sorry. Give me just a
Okay,
sec.
so quick side while you're doing that. So inside chat right now, I was having some fun back and forth with Mitchell about the madness that happened on Praise's channel the other day. Do you guys know who this one-way Calvinist character was that I interacted with on Praise's channel?
One way, yes, I
Yeah.
know him very well. I've known him for many years.
Okay, I
know him better than anybody here, I'm sure.
I had my first interaction with him the other night. He was drunk off of his ass, and we had a rather entertaining back and forth on Praise's channel. It was pretty interesting. Let's just say that he wanted to argue over the Aristotelian definitions of the word "is," and I basically accused him of being Bill Clinton. It was fun.
Well,
He's a he heavily promotes Calvinism. He and I used to engage in Skype conversations until late hours of the night many years ago, back in 2009, 10. like 8, 9, 10, and we did it many a time. We became friends, and until I realized that everything he does is about promoting Calvinism, and I severed the ties.
And I'll say my view of him has been that like he just doesn't really seem to take things serious in a Christian way, and so it doesn't surprise me to hear that he was publicly discussing Christ while being drunk. I'll just be straight up. That makes it look like Christianity is fake. It makes it look like regeneration does not exist. Like if people have a problem and they're drunk sometimes, then that's fine. But we should not be representing Christianity like that.
It was rather entertaining. I'll tell you. And I don't disagree with you on what you just said there, Nicholas. I mean, it was. I'll tell you what. I have never had I was cracking up. I mean, in our back and forth, I was cracking up. I was just like, is this actually okay? But the part that got me, and I'd love to get y'all's opinion on this. The part that I just kept, I've been contemplating this throughout the day. Actually, he made the argument that Jesus Christ had libertarian free will, but only in the determinism that is executed from God the Father.
He believes in what's called compatibilist free will. This is something that Calvinists put forth because they want to hold on to the idea that people have free will, while at the same time saying holding to Calvinism, which posits that somebody becomes saved because God already saved them. He pre-decided that they would be saved before they ever recognized that they have that Christ is their Savior. So everybody is pre-saved or pre-condemned according to Calvinism, and so I think they recognize the absurdity of believing that someone doesn't have true libertarian free will, and so they try to weave that into their Calvinism by saying that people have compatibilist free will. In other words, they have free will, but it's only free will in such that it will comport with God's will. In other words, they're locked inside a bottle. They have free will, but only can move around inside the bottle. So
right. Well, and I get that. I get that in the context of humans, right? But how, if you're going to hold that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and is God, how can God be omnipotent and subject to determinism? Like that, to me, that's like a literal contradiction.
You're not correcting, John.
I like what the Nicene Creed says on the topic. Refers to Jesus as the Son of God, born, not made, God from God, true God from true God. And so, yeah, I mean, even with a Calvinistic perspective, true God born from true God would not really be subject to the same.
And the irony of this whole deal for me, from my perspective,
I don't know. Actually, it's very fascinating.
Well, what it started this whole conversation off, which was totally cracking me up because he completely forgot what we were discussing about. He was so drunk, but the original supposition that was being discussed was the whole aspect of the Trinity and the different interpretations of the Trinity and how it causes so much controversy. And I was talking about like, okay, well, we do need to start looking at like semantic meaning. And does English language, for example, have the capacity from a semantic perspective to actually truly, and even just from a human language perspective, do we actually have the capacity to truly describe what God is, right?
I would say no.
Well, I would agree with you on that. But now I'm not suggesting there aren't things that aren't literally heretical and contradictory and stuff. But I'm saying in the context of like, if it's very minor semantic differences, then I don't necessarily think we should be going into like full scale war with each other. Is the point I was making. But in the context of a Calvinist who argues that God, all parts of God, of the Trinity, are equal, and yada yada yada. I'm like, okay, then how can you say that the Son of God is deterministically subject to the will of the Father, yet be the same? Like, it's like, to me, if that's the case, and all things apply to all facets of the Trinity, then you are applying determinism and its limitations to God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And it's like, well, then you have just literally removed God's omnipotence from the equation, if God is subject to determinism. Right? You guys follow my thought process there? Does that make sense?
So hang on. Does God know if you're going to go to heaven or hell before you were even born?
Well, if I may
knowledge
say,
is not determinism, though.
I
Yeah.
don't know if we want to go down the whole rabbit hole of Calvinism for this stream.
Yeah, I'm not a Calvinist. I'm an atheist. So
Yeah, I get that. No, it's not your fault or anything, Tony. I'm just saying, like, we may want to see if we still have more we want to engage with on the topic, or I mean, sometimes
I
streams
have zero
eventually
patience for Calvinism.
you can see
Zero.
where determinism sort of comes in, though. It's not a stretch.
Well, I mean, in Calvinism, determinism absolutely does nothing to lessen free will. But the thing is that the rest of us are made, and Christ is not made. He's begotten. And so I don't think determinism would apply to him. Rather, obedience applies to him. He is obedient to the Father. We read that where he learned through the things he suffered. He learned obedience through the things which he suffered. And then that's like, he learned obedience. What? Yeah, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. So these things are a mystery, right? I mean, I would be down to get into talking about it in full, but it is such a deep topic that it's absolutely going to end what the live stream is intended to be. And sometimes a live stream starts on one topic and moves to another. I just don't know if that's the choice we want to make.
Hey, yeah, I'm messing with my mic again. It said the audio's coming through bad. How's it now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, it's better. I mean, it was crackling a bit as if there's something going on with a cord or something.
Okay.
Earlier, but not now.
Okay, so is it sounding normal? Is it sounding echoey? Is there like background noise you're hearing?
Normal.
No, all good.
Okay. Yeah, whatever these new beta tests, I'm looking at this new setting in StreamYard, and I just realized that I think it's not compatible, or it's like counterbalancing my nice microphone. It's making my nice microphone suck. Because it literally is an option that's like, if you have a high quality microphone, disable this. Like, okay, well, that would explain a lot.
So can I throw a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons then?
Go for it.
Do you guys have any problems with your stance on abortion and the levels of slaughter in the Bible?
Do we have? Say that again. Ask that again. Do we have what?
Do you find any conflict there between the amount, like, if you kill the mother, the child dies, right? So that's abortion with extreme prejudice. Do you guys have any problems with those acts depicted in the Bible and your stance on abortion?
The actions that God took to have people slain in the Bible were justified, morally justified. People pretend that's not true, and they're ignorant as to why that's true.
Oh, I'm not debating that.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes abortion is okay. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, does the Bible teach that? I don't think it does.
Well, by just the sheer level of it, the act itself, the righteous justification that people feel when they do it.
I'm not really sure what you're getting at. I don't have a conflict, and I don't find myself having a conflict between anything in the Bible and any of the beliefs that I have about abortion or anything else.
If you kill a pregnant woman, do you automatically abort her child?
Well, if the mother dies, the infant, the unborn dies.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that's abortion with extreme prejudice, isn't it? You're taking two lives.
It's not technically abortion. It's a side effect of murdering the mother.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. There's actually a federal law against that. So
yeah, it's also in the Bible. If if two men have a fight and somehow a woman gets struck in a way that forces her to eject the child early, if there's no mayhem, the word mischief is the English translation in the King James, then there will be civil penalties according to the husband in the courts. But if there is mischief, that is referring to the death of the child, then there will be blood for blood, so forth, so on. So it's the death penalty. Now, as a matter of war and wiping people out, based specifically on God's command, I guess is what Tony is getting at. And some people make the same call with the flood. And these are specific incidental, as in a single incidence. So they are specific incidental commands of God who has that authority, but there's never any authority given to us to make it okay to kill without due process.
So, but like in some circumstances, it's warranted.
Well, it's not warranted in some circumstances. We don't have that authority. Only God has that authority. So, equating God's authority to like human circumstances to discuss God as if he's less than God, and then that just becomes, a God that is not worthy of special pleading is not a God claim. So that's the thing, is people can say, well, you're special pleading for God. It's like, well, it's a God claim. He is special. So you have to accept that if you want to have that discussion. And that specialness goes deep because he is righteous. He can be trusted to be righteous. That sort of a thing. So it goes with the definition of who God is. So once you're ignoring the definition, you're not in the discussion anymore.
Yeah, I just find it like, you guys are obviously, can you think of any situation where an abortion is warranted?
Well, if a woman is going to die unless they remove the child, and then if the child cannot be kept alive, or if it's necessary that the child is killed first, then in that circumstance, you have a hard choice, because either way, there's going to be death. And if the mother is required to keep the baby alive, if she dies, they both die. Or even if it's just a risk. Now, these are very hard choices, of course, but that's completely different than choosing abortion.
Well, and I think something else that needs to be considered in relation to this question is, until really the last, let's say 50, 60 years, but really no greater than the past century, right? I'd say more like no greater than the last 50 years. Up until that point in all of recorded history, this whole premise of, do we take out the kid if the mother may die, has never even been an option. Like there were many famous people throughout history whose mothers died in childbirth. Like that was common. This happened all the time, right? So I mean, this whole moral conundrum didn't even exist until we had the medical technology to potentially hypothetically make a call on who should live and die in this context.
And to piggyback off that, the same more the ethical dilemmas you get where what if they look and they see the baby maybe is going to have this defect or that defect. And I brought up a good point in Knox Stream about like Tim Tebow, you know, they said that the likelihood he was going to be, I can't remember that exact scenario. He was either going to, wasn't going to make it or he's going to be just severely deformed and have these diseases, but and he wasn't going to be worth living. And he turned out to be, a powerhouse in college football, 1-2 Heisman.
He became Tim Tebow. There's literally something called Tebowing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah.
So, I mean, you get into another can of worms there on ethics, but
well, I mean,
that's a tough question.
In my debate with my tag team debate against Michael the Canadian Atheist and Rib, I mean, we went down this rabbit hole, and not to crow too much, I did make Rib cry, and that was awesome.
I was there, you know, I super chatted in that to him. So I remember that.
But in that context of debate, I used my nephew.
I felt bad for doing it, but go ahead.
I used my nephew. You know, you used Tim Tebow as a famous example. Like I used my nephew. Like my nephew fulfilled the whole, hey mother, if you don't abort this child, you're gonna die. And
right.
The baby's guaranteed to die, and you're gonna die. Like fast forward literally 19 years. My nephew is 6'5", a state debate champion, plays an expert pianist, won all sorts of scholarships, all this kind of stuff, and is now in college. Like, he's a singer and an actor, and all this crazy stuff, right? They were told my sister was going to die, and he would not make it. Not a chance. Now he's a walking, talking example, just like a Tim Tebow, for example, is a famous example, right? Yeah. And there's so many of those. I mean,
and that brings up too, like, what about kids with Down syndrome or these other diseases? Like, and I think like kids with Down syndrome are some of the most happiest people on earth, but you have ones that maybe like the kid I brought up off the Shriners commercial. He's Caleb. He's had like 10 bone surgeries. He's got that disease, but he's
the best pitch man of all time.
He is, man. He is. He's just a blessing.
There's data I want to bring up on this.
Can I actually? I want to. So, Tony, there is absolutely no circumstance that a woman needs to get an abortion. Because here's the problem. So before a woman is actually ready to give birth, she starts to dilate. So if a woman's life is literally in danger, all they have to do is do a C-section. Because if they try to dilate her, it's going to take up to like a day. And it may not even work. And it can cause all kinds of complications. And there's a doctor on YouTube, and I forget his name, who used to do abortions, and he talks about that. How there are times definitely when they do the C-section, the baby may not live, and sometimes the mom may not live because of whatever is wrong with her, failing organs, whatever it is, But he says they actually live 50% of the time, and there is no need for an abortion to kill a baby. Absolutely no need.
So, I mean, I know there's certain circumstances where bad diabetes can be a problem, and you can get halfway through the pregnancy and the mother's in such a bad way. They say, look, if we don't terminate this, we're going to lose both of them. What do you do in that circumstance?
When did that circumstance happen?
Oh,
but here's the thing, though. They still have to dilate her. You forget about like the mechanics of the woman's body. They still have to dilate her in order to do an abortion, in order to do a D&E. And that's to pull the baby apart, or in order to do the suction, which I think is a second term. All right. They still have to dilate her. Otherwise they're going to rip her open. All right. All they have to do is if she is having diabetic problems, there are babies that have lived at 27 weeks. So you cannot have an argument that justifies abortion in any way.
Well, actually, it's now the current record is actually 21 weeks, 5 days.
Nice. See, like, and you can't even justify, when do you think it's a baby? Well, you can hear a baby's heart week at 3 weeks. And I think if we had better stethoscopes or whatever, we could probably hear the baby's heartbeat much earlier. I don't know, but
One of the things that really frustrates me about like the Roe v. Wade arguments is legally Roe v. Wade is completely and utterly dependent upon what is the accepted viability at the time, right? And back in the day, potential viability was much, much later than what it is now, given the advancements in medical technology.
Good point.
So if we're now have the potential for not all babies survive that are born, at 21 weeks and 5 days, right? But they can is the point. The can survive that's the only thing that's required from a legal perspective in terms of what is viability. So if it is possible, then 21 weeks and 5 days has been proven to be a correct and totally realistic option at that point. And you can also continue to extrapolate that from like, okay, if it used to be, 27 weeks and now it's 21 weeks based on our technology advancements, it is extraordinarily probable to conclude that as our medical technology and understanding of biological systems continues to advance, that number is going to get shorter and shorter.
Have you heard about the surrogate woman that they're starting to make? These machines that can actually reproduce the womb.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean,
yeah, that's really cool. It's funny too because I was reading about it and people are like, "This is going to take away abortion because there's no need for abortion." These women that are complaining about having these babies, which I have a very harsh opinion of Roe versus Wade. I think it's just women's excuse to not take action for their sin or whatever, basically having sex with no protection. But now there's not going to be any excuse. They don't even have to carry the baby at a certain amount of weeks. I forget what they said. Do you remember, John? It was like 14 weeks.
I don't recall, but yeah, it's pretty short.
Yeah, it's like lasts like 14 weeks or maybe the baby has to be in the mother's womb at least 14 weeks or something like I can't remember, but it literally takes away the need for abortion. I'm actually kind of excited about it.
Guys, I'm going to take off. It's good seeing you guys. I hope you all have a great weekend.
You too,
and I'll
Nev.
catch you another time. Huh?
Same to you, Nev. Have a good one, man.
Night,
All right.
Nev.
God bless.
Good night,
Yeah,
folks.
see you later.
Bye.
Well, and I'll say this. So Stephen Tibbetts, he brought up a good point. Ectotopic pregnancy is probably the only one. And you guys all know what ectotopic pregnancy is?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
when the fertilized eggs like outside the uterus, right?
No, it's where it gets caught in the tube, in the fallopian tube, and it starts to grow there. And it will actually literally rupture the tube and it will kill the woman. Like ectotopic pregnancies are extremely dangerous. Like that is the only time, but that's not even really, that's such a rare circumstance for, well, actually it's getting more common now because of ovarian cysts and all kinds of problems with women's fertility today. But that's so close to like conception that I don't know. I wouldn't even, I don't know. I'm not sure how to classify that one.
I just think maybe we shouldn't be like totally black and white about it, to just draw a line in the sand is sometimes, creates more problems than it solves.
Okay, in what instance is relying on pure subjectivity in a general sense more likely to be have a positive outcome versus a negative outcome?
Look, I hate to do it because I keep bringing up hypotheticals and that. And Jesse, if you didn't hear me before, I'm actually pro-life. I'm against abortion, but I'm not totally black and white on it. But the girl, and this is hypothetical. I've never heard of it happening, but it is reasonable that it possibly could. You've got a 14-year-old who's raped. They find her hanging in a bedroom. She's nearly dead because she tried to take her life, and she's 3 months into a pregnancy. and she's adamant that if she has to carry this child, she's going to kill herself. I mean, you know, that's not out of the realm of possibility. What do we do in that stage?
Well, I can
It's
tell
your daughter.
you.
It's your daughter.
Well, I can tell you that according to the scripture, the child cannot be punished for the crime of the father. And so you can't give the death penalty to the child because the father was raped. So when people are suicidal, they have measures that they take in places where if it really becomes necessary, they try to keep them in that place where they're unable to commit suicide. That's a drastic situation. But it doesn't really have anything to do with giving the death penalty to the child.
And just to go off of statistics, only like less than 1% of rape victims ever get an abortion. And their reasoning is that it's unfair to the child what the excuse me, what the father did, what the biological father did. So
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
yeah, so I think even the ones that go through with the pregnancy, they might hate it, you know, but they don't hate the baby. And
Yeah.
I don't know about the ones who get abortions. Maybe it's I'm actually not sure. I've not looked up their stories. But there's nothing happy about an abortion. Like
I think you'd have to walk a mile in their shoes. And
Yeah, that's probably the toughest hypothetical you could give.
yeah,
I know an anecdotal account that exists where a woman asked, I think it was her pastor, maybe, about it, or it might have been someone else, but whoever it was, they talked about it with her, and then she asked I think it was her medical doctor actually, but the point is that she asked, would her like feeling of victimization and all that, you know, all her terrible feeling about it go away if she aborted the child, and she was told no. And so she went through and had the child, and it was a daughter, and they became like best friends, as parent and child sometimes do when there's not a whole lot of family around, or they just can become best friends anyway. So yeah, I mean, she was so distraught over what someone else did that she almost lost her best friend, her future best friend, you know? So, I mean, real life hypotheticals can go every which way. Now, what I said wasn't a hypothetical, but it easily could have been, you know?
Yeah. That's why I sort of don't like bringing them up. They can, like you said, they can just go in 8 different directions.
Well,
But it can be useful, though. I think we had useful discussion, so it was fine.
Well, I agree. I mean, I agree with what you just said there, Nicholas. And yeah, it can be useful, but I think from and I'm not applying this to you, Tony, in the context of which you did it, but the hardcore defenders of abortion, right? They try to use these usually extraordinarily hypothetical or so incredibly rare that they shouldn't even be being applied to the general position, right? And it's like, so you're like, per this logic that you're saying, like, if this crazy extraordinarily improbable thing happened, then let's just suspend all of the other rational conclusions that would be reached in this particular context or instance, and suspend all of that for everybody else, because there's this crazy hypothetical outlier that might happen.
Yeah, no, totally.
I mean, because if you go down that rabbit hole, like, how do you have any semblance? And I'm not playing this to you, Tony. I mean, I'm talking about in general. Like, how do you have society if you want to go down that logic? Like, you could literally apply that to every law. I mean,
yeah,
it would be okay for you to kill your father because you think that he might beat your mother if he gets super duper drunk and smokes meth and hadn't had a beer for 4 days straight. I mean, like, therefore we need to make all of the drugs legal. And if he murders my mother in that context, he is mentally disturbed and can be ruled innocent by mental insanity. I mean, like, you could come up, I'm just making that crap off the top of my head, right? But you could go down some kind of rabbit hole like that and be like, well, I guess in that context, wait, the father was abused as a child. That's why he smokes meth. Therefore, if he kills your mother, it's actually because he was abused as a child. Like that's I mean, to me, I feel
it
like
happens a lot.
that's the
When
kind
in sentencing, they ask for reductions, based on that. So
Tony, are you like partial? Are you like still pro-life and pro-choice?
No. I just aren't like super. Like I don't operate in 100%. If you know what I mean. Like I'm not willing to just go, no, this should never, ever, ever happen, because I can't account for every situation. So, but I'm definitely like I was saying to the guys before. I have a daughter. I saw her on ultrasound, and the whole idea of abortion just went right out the window so fast. But yeah, I just don't operate in 100%. That's all.
Gotcha. So if murder is 100% wrong, then are you partial on murder? And I'm not talking about abortion. I'm just talking about murder in general.
Then again, how do you define murder? I could bring up 1,000 Bible stories where I could just consider it murder.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Bible. I'm talking about the law. The law is 100% murder is murder. Correct?
So to take another human life.
Yes, to take another human life.
yeah, I think I could help you out, Tony, a little bit on the hypothetical that, like, let's say on the reverse of, let's say a mother, it's likely that the child is going to cause her to die, and so they force her to go ahead and have the baby, and then she does die. So did you actually end up causing her death? You know what I mean?
That's a really good question, actually. Did you?
I'm just saying, like, I know what you're saying, that there is a small portion of gray area into this, that's why I don't know. I've not definitely made up my mind about, like, charging women or forcing women to have a baby against their will, or charging them with murder if they abort their child, just because, like, I feel that it is murder and they'll have to deal with that. So yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
We have an obligation.
Well, wait, hold on, Chris. I'll tell you this. They won't make her go through a physical birth. There is something called a cesarean. All right. That's instant. It takes like an hour. So if she's dying, like from a bullet wound or something like that, and they need to get the baby out of her, they're just going to do a cesarean. They're not going to make her go through an 8-hour birth. No doctor would ever do that. They will do the procedures necessary to save her life and the baby's life, because the baby is a completely separate being inside of her. So there is absolutely no reason for abortion whatsoever.
The one I brought up earlier was Tim Tebow and his mom. She had gotten I think she was in the Philippines, and it was like her 5th child, and she contracted an amoebic infection in the intestine. It was caused by a parasite, something she ate or drank or something, and she went into a coma, and she was treated with a lot of antibiotics, and then they found out she was pregnant, and they urged her, to have the abortion, for her own safety. They told her that the medicines would cause irreversible damage to her baby. Now, luckily she had the baby. Her faith was her to have the baby, and she did. And we know who Tim Tebow is, so it's a great thing. But, like, if somehow there was a law that forced her to do that, and somehow she, from that particular scenario, it did cause her death, then I don't know. I think that would be a scenario where just saying that she would live with or without, regardless, she would live. I can't say for sure. You say she could have died. It's possible she could have died if she had to have the pregnancy, but she didn't, thank God. But
and that's different though. She contracted a disease. What some people say that are kind of partialists or, quarterists or whatever you are, Tony, that, like, what if it's the pregnancy itself? And that is actually not medically true, because they can actually save the baby and they can save the mother. Now, she might be so far gone down, like, it's like somebody that has a heart attack, just because you have a heart attack doesn't give you a right to kill a baby, an innocent baby.
And right, and that's probably where I'm a little bit still, like, I haven't 100%. I guess maybe I need to look into the science on that a little bit more before I go 100%. But I definitely believe it's in a general sense, taking of the life. Like if it's there's no problems or anything, you just decide to have an abortion. It's the taking of a life. It's pretty clear to me.
And we live in a circumstance where the law allows people for convenience, and they want to dramatize it or make it like the convenience is a big deal, and it can be a big deal matter of convenience. I'm not, but it is convenience. That is the category it falls into. And so getting into all this minutia of medical potentials and this and that, it's we're still fighting just for, if there is no minutia, then humans have a right to not be murdered. And so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time distracted on all this minutia. I mean, it's good to get into some, but we've done it a lot. You mentioned Down syndrome earlier, Chris Keith, and I think it is in Australia, actually. I'm pretty sure that they report it as a statistic as if they have medical progress, because they have less babies with Down syndrome being born. But the way they do that is they're able to genetically test them, and then they are murdering them in the womb if they have Down syndrome. So there are less children with Down syndrome being born. Then they're calling it medical progress for having less children with Down syndrome being born. It just shows how absurd,
that's
the
like
way
Hitler.
the world is. Well, it's showing how absurd the way the world is making its cases and stuff. Just how absurd it's all gotten.
Well,
I'll agree with that.
And their battle cry is always rape, right? and medical conditions, when they haven't even researched it about these medical conditions. Doctors are actually pretty good at their jobs when it comes to procedures, especially protecting both the baby and the mother. Because my sister-in-law, she had a large blood clot go into her lung. Now, whatever that word is, if you think about it, anatomically, it means it actually went through her body, through her heart, and into her lungs. And she was 6 months pregnant. And they did everything that they could to protect the baby, because they had to do x-rays, so they had to put a big thing over her belly. And they had to go through her hip, and it was an extremely risky surgery and all that kind of stuff, because she also had a blood disorder. She was taking Coumadin, or whatever it is, the one that lasts for 6 days or something like that.
Yeah, Coumadin blood thinner.
Yeah, and they actually had to stick a screen in her heart to try to catch the rest of these blood clots. That's the reason why she was on blood thinners, because her blood is way too thick. But I mean, they did everything to protect her and the child. So if it ever happens that a woman catches a disease or something like that, they have
Apologize. Excuse me, guys. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah, so they do everything they can to protect both the baby and the mother. So when they intentionally go out and say to abort the child, that's an intentional murder. There's really nothing else. I can't see anything else beyond that, especially when we know we have procedures in place that could potentially save people. But there are people that die in car accidents, and we have all the technology to save them, but they just have either lost too much blood or whatever the case may be.
So Jesse, you have zero tolerance for any abortion for whatever reason.
Yes, because I've seen the emotional, what it does to women emotionally. Even women who are just trying to have a child and they have miscarriages, it scars them. That tells me that there is something 100% immoral there when something inside of you dies or gets pulled out of you. I was watching this girl on a live stream, and it was her second abortion. And, and she's been convinced that it was just a bundle of cells, because I think she did a first term. Can't remember. And she was crying, and she was like, I don't understand why I'm crying. It wasn't even a baby. It was too young, or whatever the weeks was, and all that kind of stuff. And that's because there is a moral link to this. That's the reason why I'm 100% no gray area. I actually used to be, part pro-choice, but I was pro-life. I don't ever want to take away people's choice, but this is murder. And the more and more my friends have chipped away at my view on that, I'm now 100% there's no reason for it.
Yeah, I must admit, talking to you guys, you are convincing me more and more to be 100%. But I just can't, that hypothetical But
Well,
just
it's only, I think something that everybody has to just think about is if, think about this from a hypothetical, right? In terms of the defense of abortion, everybody likes to go to hypothetical. So let's take a hypothetical in the opposite position, right? So let's say that as societies, we made the intentional action to, as leaders, so the PM of Australia, the president of the United States, the governors of the individual states here in America, et cetera, took the public position that we're not trying to take the stance that you should, we're going to try and keep single mothers down, all that kind of stuff, right? However, what we're going to do is we're going to, in order to counter the need for you to have an abortion, as leaders of society, both public and private, we are going to provide all the resources possible to give you options, right? If this happens, to give you options. We're going to remove many of the restrictions for adoption. Extrapolate that out, and they create literally publicly stated, not just, yes, it's in some freaking, flyer somewhere in some, handbook at some government agency. I mean, it's like the public position that's put forth on the news, right? Giant press conferences, they do all that kind of stuff. Like, here's what we're going to do to try and help people. That in and of it, and then they took the action, right? And backed up what they said in terms of providing the resources and such. Would it necessarily eliminate every single, behind closed doors abortion? Probably not. But would it mitigate huge portions of them? I think so.
Yeah, I think I agree. If we put in the infrastructure, then there'd be, that.
And to me, when you really consider the amount of capital that governments and charities and all this kind of stuff spend on all sorts of random topics, right, and issues and stuff, money shouldn't be the problem. Now, the money for the individual, for the single mom, yeah. But when you actually think about it in the macro view of like how much capital is spent on random crap, and then you look at the number of like, how many babies would there actually be? And it's like, wait a minute. So $1 billion, just for example purposes, probably would cover like all the medical expenses for all of, the actual, the birth and everything for all of these potential babies per year, right? And I know like Australia's government spending is not the same as the United States, but here in the States, like we literally give away more money to other countries that could cover like 0 to 18 for all these like single kids. Like
easily, like
that's
that's
just the money we give to other countries. I mean, it's like the capital, and that's the public money. We're not even talking about the private money that's available for all of this stuff. That's why, to me, it's like it's such bull crap in terms of the real, like, if you actually wanted to solve the problem from a moral perspective, we could solve the problem, but people don't want to.
Well, like when I was in Iraq, I was with this CAG guy, a civil affairs group, and he told me, he's like, I've handed out millions to these people, millions of U.S. money, trying to help them build up their infrastructure, so they didn't have whatever on their roofs, and of course they didn't use any of the money for that. But I mean, if we can't stop murder with our laws, like we can't govern morality. We can't. There's just no way to do it. We've tried. We've outlawed murder. We've outlawed rape. We've outlawed this. Does it still happen? Yep. And, they try to use it as an excuse for abortion. Like, well, then they'll just go and do it in the back alleys, and do it illegally. And gun owners are like, yeah, duh. It's literally the same argument all across the board about morality. Like, you'll never stop criminals. You'll never stop these mentally deranged people from, using hooks and trying to pull the baby out, and all those crazy things, which they wouldn't do. Not nowadays, but you can't stop that. You never will. So to me, for the abortion argument, I don't think it's a very good argument from those who are pro-choice.
Well, and I think one of the aspects too, I mean, this is well documented that very large numbers of the most quote unquote at risk women in these these situations huge percentages of them are unaware of the alternative options. They're conditioned to think this is the only option. And when you look at at least here in the United States, the very aggressive legal actions taken by pro-choice advocates to literally prevent the alternatives to be made, the women considering abortion to have the alternatives put in front of them before they make this choice, like to make sure they know all of their options. It's like, let's think about this. There's in so many other contexts, there's laws that require a professional to disclose all of the potential options before they, have a client move forward on X. Like, you must disclose all of the options before you get them to sign this contract. But
Hey,
we
John.
have the literal reciprocal being put in place in terms of abortion. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just linked. I did want it to get pushed up in chat. It's called Save the Storks. It sounds like kind of a silly YouTube name, but that's literally what they do. They have a van where they talk to them about all their options. They do talk about abortion. They would try to not do it, but they give them all their options. They show them a picture of their child and their belly, and it's really cool. It's a very cool website. So I just wanted to show you guys that before it got pushed up in chat.
No, it's great. I mean, all of that. To me, that's why when you really go below the surface level talking points that have been just drilled into people's heads over the last 50 years, when you go below the surface, it's like, hang on, what are you arguing for? Why are you I don't understand why you would be in favor of this now that you know that this is also an option, right? And it's interesting. There's been studies on this of, the vast, I forget the exact numbers, but it's a gigantic percentage of people are adamantly against late-term abortion. And then a very large percentage is against, like second trimester abortion. And then a much smaller number, but it's still a pretty sizable one, is like, well, I guess I'm okay with like very, very early stage, right? But then the pro-choice advocates argue that, oh, well, they only look at like the early term number. Oh, 70% of people are in favor of abortion. And it's like, yeah, literally the reciprocal of that is in favor of late term abortion. But you literally try to hide and then still push for the legalization or the legality of protection of late term abortion. Like, why is that? You're literally doing a bait and switch.
And this whole late-term abortion being only third trimester thing really bothers me. That was why I asked the question earlier, what's considered a late-term? Because we heard a description of, I want to say it was a 22-week abortion, which is, it's not so long before the third trimester, but it is. And that same description fits for weeks and weeks earlier. And, if they weren't small enough to fit through a tube, it would fit for much, much earlier. And like, all of that is late term by any relevant measure. I mean,
So I can tell you what the descriptions are. So the D&E, the dismemberment, is first term. The saline, which is the one that suffocates and burns the child and chokes them, is second term. And this late term, the one that you're talking about, is actually third term. So it's the last, however many terms, it's broken into the last 3 months of the pregnancy. And it's disgusting. All three of them are disgusting, but
That just makes me so sad. That's evil.
did you know that there are abortion survivors, Tony?
Yeah, I know. That's hardcore.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because on my feminism debate, I posted 3 of them, and they were all women. 2 are survivors of a saline infusion, and 1 is botched D&E. Most botched D&Es, when they survive, it's because either the doctor's really just that bad, or they took the twin.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Sal, the link is in the description. I would like you to come on the stream and tell the story. The audience is pretty small, but it would also be there for future people who check out the video. And Well, I'm not trying to be argumentative. The description we had of the 22-week abortion was a dismemberment, which is second term, where he said that it wouldn't fit through a tube, so you would go in blind and start ripping the baby apart with instruments. And then you have to account for every piece, including every skull fragment and stuff.
Well, it's
Otherwise-
ironic. One of the single most common causes of either death of the mother post-abortion or like major hospitalization problems is they don't get all the parts out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they
Yeah,
cause
'cause when
infection and like rotting. It literally has a rotting piece of carcass inside of the mother. It's disgusting.
Well,
Well,
I'll
they
read
have
this
to
to you
break
guys.
the skull, and when they crush the skull and then the brains ooze out and stuff, the thing is that they have to get every skull fragment, and those are sharp pieces.
Well, and it's not even just that. Just doing that procedure. So I've got a thing right here of risks of abortion: heavy bleeding, infection, incomplete abortion, which you guys are talking about, damage to the cervix because it's not natural for this to occur, scarring of the uterine lining, perforation of the uterus, damage to internal organs, and death. And this is for future stuff, future childbearing and pregnancy outcomes, secondary infertility, ectopic pregnancy, spontaneous abortion and stillbirth, complications of pregnancy, preterm birth, small for gestational age, low birth weight, risk of breast cancer, mental health disorders, and premature death. And that's all and that's any term abortion.
It is very
Yeah.
something is very interesting. You mentioned like the breast cancer issue. There's actually been quite a few studies done on breast cancer being one of, but they've actually been kept discovering several other like different significant diseases that have very high corollary to abortion, and like the mother having performed abortions, and like
cervical cancer too.
I think cervical cancer, and there's a couple of them. It was in a book I was reading, and I forget what it is now. But where I'm going with all this is like they're basically being able to find a corollary between like women who had more than one abortion and 2, 3, 4, like their probability of having these cancers, these issues was like basically guaranteed. And so it's one of the things that really pisses me off when I listen. At least here, I don't know what the talking points are down there in Australia, Tony, but like here, all we hear about is like women's health, women's health. And I'm like, okay, so we now have documented studies that show if you have multiple abortions, the probability of you having X cancer is like almost 100%. And then you're going to tell me that doing this action, which we know is going to result, or is an extraordinarily high probability in being a carcinogen, for lack of a better term, you're claiming that is part of promoting women's health. Like, if that's not a literal antithesis, I don't know what is.
It's so dumb. Like, I laugh and I'm like, really? Your health, when it actually does more damage to your body, because they have to force your body to actually, do things that it's not ready to do yet. Like the chemicals are not in your body, your cervix isn't expanding, the baby's not turning. Like, there are so many problems. And I think they've actually even linked, potential breast problems to women who don't breastfeed, because it's actually natural to breastfeed. Now, I know that there are definitely problems with children latching and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, even that, we have to get the milk out.
Well, as a sidebar on nursing, did you guys know that it's a well accepted premise, documented at the freaking yin yang, that breastfed kids on average have an 8-point higher IQ than kids that were fed not breastfed.
Yes.
8 points IQ difference. I mean, you are literally talking about dumbass retard, literally, versus potential, normal IQ and, gifted. We're not going to say gifted, but like above average, an intelligent kid, like very intelligent kid. Differences. And just in those 8-point swings. And like when you think about that, of like, okay, so we know this. It's like I've read the papers on this stuff. It's the same thing with there's actually an this one, which what I'm about to say also in conjunction with the breastfed versus non-breastfed just pisses me off so much. Okay, so they have also determined that kids who had a stay-at-home mom, or not say mother, but like stayed at home or were not put into daycare, like I'm talking about like infancy, 6 weeks they're in daycare, mom's back to work, right? They've also shown that there's about a 7-point IQ difference between the kids who either had a stay-at-home child care provider, right? And those who were put into daycare. Okay, so let's think about this. If you factor in mom or the mother figure taking care of the kid from infancy on to about 5 or 6 day to day, and breastfeeding, you've accounted for 15 points in IQ. Now you're talking about gigantic difference in intellect. And then we're wondering why, like, the demographics that have a higher propensity to go with formula and sticking their kid directly into daycare are seeing direct reduction in IQ points. So we know cause and effect, but nobody wants to admit it.
Nope, because they just want it easy. That's the whole problem. Like, people don't want to take responsibility for their actions. That's what I meant to say earlier about Roe versus Wade. And that's what I think it was about. It had nothing to do with whatever, the viability of the baby. Absolutely not. It's because there were a bunch of radical women out there. They're like, my body, my choice. Whatever, it is not your choice. Technically, you can't procreate on your own. So it's only 50% your choice. And even less because it's not your body. And then, of course, the men have no choice in this. And this angers me so much when some of my male friends are like, I don't have a choice. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Your sperm did, because you put it inside of her. Like, are you kidding? Like, she can't do this on her own.
That sperm may have arrived inside her prior to the male's expectation. And now I blame the woman for that. But Tony, I think Tony's wrapping up, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. Great dialogue and being very open to conversation and not being the typical ridiculous YouTuber that wants to go on these like crazy rabbit holes of defending the indefensible. So I appreciate it, man. You're welcome back.
Yeah, no dramas. All right, well, I'll catch you around now. I've got all this mic problems sorted out. You might see me hanging around a little bit more.
Awesome, man. Yeah, come back anytime.
All right.
Nice talking to you, Tony.
Later. See you later.
But yeah, if the sperm arrived prematurely, it's totally the woman's fault. That's all the woman's fault.
It just, I don't know. I see all the implications of this, like, killing babies. Men have no rights to their children whatsoever. Like, I'll never forget this when I was in the Marine Corps, and one of my Marines, his ex-wife, had their son. He was like 5 years old or something like that. And she already had a breathalyzer on her car. Couldn't get into her car, couldn't start it or whatever because she was drunk. She had no family in the state. He had no family in that state. And we weren't even in the same state. We were in California and she was in like Oklahoma or something. I don't even remember where she was at. And the police literally had nowhere to take the child except for the next door neighbors who babysat him on occasion. Not even related. And he had no rights. He could not take his child because he was active duty, And it all leads into, these rights to kill people and abortion. It's like, well, when are they going to start, pushing it to like a year old or 6 months old? Like where's the age of viability?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, it's I don't know, all of these questions, the conundrums, the different positions that are taken, they all are ultimately dependent upon subjective versus objective morality. I mean, that's what it ultimately boils down to. And either life is sacred or it is not.
Yeah, you can't have something in between. Can't have both.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, it's either a baby or it's not. And therefore you're not a human because it's a baby, which is a human. Like you can't have both here, well, it's viable at 27 weeks, so we can kill it before that. It's like, no, it's a baby then. It was a baby before that. And I believe from the moment the cell splits, That's a new person right there. Bam.
Very true. Okay, so Bill Moore. I can never tell if Bill is coming in with like real questions or if he's made up a brain teaser. And there's going to be an underlying like
moral thing to it.
Yeah, so Bill says, I was asked, he's calling me Mad Dog now. So Bill, I'm actually thinking about going, embracing the rage, calling me the Maddox. I'm actually thinking about embracing Maddox, but
I've already been embracing that for quite a while now.
well, I know I'm seriously thinking about having like a caricature logo created for it and just like go full bore.
Do it.
But I was asked a question by a young lady tonight at our creation meeting. Do you think flamingos share a common ancestor with penguins? I'm going to go with no, but maybe. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think so. I mean, there's so much dramatic differences between them. But it's within the realm of possibility. I don't know. A lot of those questions, in my opinion, are designed to try and, well, in this phylogenetic tree, we think that we can prove that this DNA must have evolved from that one. And that's what it all comes down to. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. So are you arguing that this instance of code is being utilized in A and B, and that the instance in case B must have evolved from case A, or it's just a different execution of similar source code? I mean, to me, that's what it really starts to boil down to, but I don't know.
I wouldn't even know. Like we've lost so many animals over the years. Like it would be kind of hard to know what is it that SFT says, like the mosaic or the ones that got originally created. Like we've seen them breed and breed and breed, and so they are a little bit different. Like let's just hypothesize and say that the original created wolf kind was a dire wolf, right? Maybe, I don't know. But we don't have those animals anymore.
Well, I personally don't think there's much likelihood that flamingos are related to penguins. Now, LPP, you mentioned the word retarded, and I just wanted to mention that I was trying to have a discussion with Boaz earlier, and it took me 3 tries, and I got back to it like an hour later eventually, because I had to switch to mentally challenged. Because and YouTube is deceptive like this. My comment showed to me, but then I saw that it did not show in StreamYard because I used the word retarded, and I did not use it in a derogatory way or anything. I was just talking about retarded folks. And as a reference of a matter of sentience of animals, just to put it in context for all this abortion debate stuff, because I was like, do you consider retarded folks less sentient than you? And like, the thing is that, YouTube was showing my comment as if it was coming up, but then if I reload it, I could see it had never come up. So they're just censoring the word retarded completely now. Inside chat comments. So just a heads up for people.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's the level of censorship is getting ridiculous at this point. I don't even know what their 1984 has become reality. That's all I gotta say.
I was in a Renaissance class, and we were talking about slavery during, a little bit before, because we kind of led up to the Renaissance, so get some background history, get some context and all that kind of stuff. And I asked him, and I said, hey, why aren't we talking about the Slavs? He goes, oh, we're not allowed to use that word. And I said, what? He goes, because it means slave. I was like, I know what it means, but why can't I use that word? That's a historical word. They actually call themselves the Slavic people because of that. Are we now going to omit that word from our dictionaries and from history? Like, I also wasn't allowed to use another word. Was it Creole? No, it was some word that slave owners would use to actually enslave either someone who was like either half black or had very dark skin, like the Narazgachi Native Americans. They're very dark looking, and we can pass as African, I guess. There was a name for them, and they would, and I forget what the name is. And my American history teacher's like, "We're not allowed to use that word anymore." I'm like, "What? What? This is a historical name. Like, they used
Well,
it on documents. Like, why are we censoring this word? It's so stupid."
well, when Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer are being banned from schools, you know you've jumped the shark. I mean, in any semblance of. I don't know how you can be in any other scenario other than being told what you are, not just what to think, but what you are allowed to think. If you're banning Tom Sawyer, I mean, I read that book when I was probably maybe 11 or 12 for the first time, and then I watched some of the Tom Sawyer movies, like multiple, because there's some classics of the Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Like I remember they remade both Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, like in the early 90s. There were remakes of those movies.
They did, didn't they?
And like, okay, when Gone with the Wind is now, being like banned, Gone with the Wind. At one point, that was I think that was like on the top 50 movies of all time list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's considered one of those.
And now it's like banned.
It's
like,
so
what? Okay, we've lost all. Like, I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand.
it's so dumb, and oh, sorry, go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah, when we look at these cultural changes, I mean, for them to continue with this Marxist stuff, there's going to have to be a lot of murder going on, and I think getting parents to partake in the murdering of their own children, and like in the womb of all places, like I know this is a vulgar way to describe it, but I'm going to anyway. Like, and I guess in a lot of cases the women are asleep when it goes on, which is the idea of like a woman spreading her legs or letting someone spread her legs so that a man can go in there and murder her child inside of her and pull it out in pieces. Like that kind of ritual, that's like the worst kind of leg spreading that could ever be done. It's just so vile.
Do you want to know what's really sad? I was watching this nurse who used to work in an abortion clinic, and they're not asleep, Nicholas. Sad thing is, and they actually will complain that, I feel something in me moving, and the doctors have to say, no, it's nothing. It's just muscles twitching, because they lie to the women and they say that they feel nothing. But did you know also that they don't have any of the cameras, the ones that show the womb or whatever? That's why they go in there blind. Because they actually cannot show the baby moving, and they twitch. They will actually twitch inside the womb, and it's like they can feel that, but they lie to them, and they're awake the whole time.
Yeah, the testimony video I showed earlier, he mentioned that the mother has been feeling the baby kick for a few weeks by that point. And in his case, that was back in the 70s, if I got the math right on that, or it could have been the early 80s based on how he told the story. But when he was actually performing them, and he was referencing where they were asleep in that case. But
now, is this the doctor that him and his wife couldn't get pregnant, and then they adopted a kid? Like, have you seen?
Yeah, so I showed that video early on in the stream. Maddox's microphone wasn't working right, so I started out having to like host the stream. So I think that was when I brought that video up, right, John? Yeah, that was right.
Yeah, I've seen his testimony, and I've seen this other nurse's testimony too, and they know that the babies twitch in the womb when they're being pulled apart, and
That's horrible.
it is absolutely it's disgusting,
Well, to bring this back in context of the debate tonight, Burgess was trying to make the whole like, well, we don't think they're actually being able to experience pain, and also it's like, dude, that defense talking point was debunked a long time ago. Like, okay, yeah, in the first couple weeks, yes, fair enough. But we now know they've got nerve cells. They've got all these different things being developed. They are having sensory perception very early on.
Like 6 weeks, right?
I forget. I'll have to Google it, but it's very short. And he was trying to act like that's not even a remotely viable opposition point. And it's like, no, bro, you're wrong. You're way behind the times.
But
And
just
just
the formation
because
of a baby.
And just because out of sight, out of mind, and they can't advocate for themselves, but like when people get involved in murder and then they never want to repent because it's so bad that they don't want to admit what it is, so they never want to repent, and then it's really bringing murder as acceptable in our culture, and that's I think a key step in all this stuff towards the Marxism that they're obviously trying to bring in. And I mentioned this a lot as an example, but Heath Ledger's Joker was a depiction of Marxism and like just like an image of Karl Marx's own poetry. And then it's also a very satanic depiction. And that was like the pop culture icon of the day 10 years ago. And then no surprise, they did these movies like The Purge and stuff as like a series. And no surprise, like 10 years later, they've got thousands of people rioting in the streets,
Okay,
And,
so found some data on that.
On the nerves or whatever.
Okay, so a comprehensive review of the scientific literature, including neural development, psychology of pain sensation, yada, 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 concludes that unborn babies may experience pain as early as 12 weeks.
Oh.
The review notes that neural connections from periphery to brain are functionally complete after 18 weeks. Nevertheless, we no longer view fetal pain as a core immediate sensation in a gestational window of 12 to 24 weeks as impossible based on the neuroscience. The review points out that a fetus may not experience pain the same way as an adult, but it does indeed experience pain as a real sensation, and this pain experience has moral implications. Significantly, because this unbiased review, blah, 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 as early as 12 weeks and certainly after 18 weeks, this comes from highly credentialed medical professions, okay, blah, blah, blah. Actually, interesting. Some of the authors of this were pro-choice, actually.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
Okay, here we go. The earliest neurons in the cortical brain, and this is what he was talking about and trying to explain. Oh, this doesn't exist yet. The cortical brain, the part responsible for thinking, memory, and other higher functions, are established starting at 6 weeks. Nerve synapses for spinal reflex are in place by 10 weeks. Sensory receptors for pain develop first around the mouth at 7 weeks and are present throughout the skin and mucosal surfaces by 20 weeks. And it goes on to greater, more detail. But so basically,
That's crazy.
Pretty early on, let's just say.
Yep. And so their argument is completely bunk, but of course, they're not being told any of this stuff. They're being lied to. The baby's just a bundle of cells, all the way up until the birth canal almost. And it's like, well, wait a second. But if babies can live outside the womb at 21 weeks, like you said, like their argument should have been dead 20 years ago, and Roe versus Wade should have been overturned. But people
I've started when people use those excuses like it's early enough that they're just a clump of cells or whatever. I'm like, okay, so are you an activist for pulling back how late it's allowed to be, at least like actively pursuing that change? Because if not, then I don't really want to have that argument only about that. Let's have the argument about what you're willing to accept.
Oh, wow. Hang on. Sorry. I'm reading through this thing here. Okay. 60% of infants born at 22 weeks who receive active hospital treatment survive.
Wow.
That's amazing. But
is that in the same article?
It's referencing another paper on that topic, but it's like a bullet point of with a reference. of 60% of infants born at 22 weeks who receive active hospital treatment will survive. The interesting point before that is that 3/4 of those delivered at 22 weeks still receive no active care.
Yep. Like one of the ladies on my presentation, her name is, and oh man, she's got such a beautiful story. Her name's Gianna Jessen. She was actually left on the table for several hours before a nurse grabbed her and took her to an emergency room. And the whole reason why her neck wasn't broken or her head crushed or whatever was because the doctor hadn't made it. She was a premature saline infusion abortion. And she has cerebral palsy because of it. And oh man, her story is so powerful. And it's funny too, because every single one that I have found that, and I haven't found a lot, that are first and second term abortion survivors are all very, very devout Christians. Very devout. Like I shouldn't have lived. I should not have lived. Like I was left on the table. They tried to burn me and suffocate me. The only reason I lived is because of Jesus. And I was like, whew, okay, those are some powerful testimonies there.
Yeah, that made the hair on my head stand up a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, Angel, Gianna is amazing. You ought to go and watch one of her videos. It will make you cry. Like I'm almost tearing up now. Like, her testimony is amazing.
I didn't know Honesty Angel had a channel going.
No. Gianna,
We're talking to Honesty Angel. Okay, you said Gianna. The way you said it, I thought you were saying that they're the same person, like telling us.
It's amazing. All three of them. I was trying to find this one guy. I was going to put him on there too, but I thought, well, it's a feminism debate, and he was actually 18, and he said it took him a while. He went through a lot of drugs and drinking when he was finally told that he wasn't adopted under normal circumstances. Basically, his mom tried to kill him. It didn't work, and he had a messed up arm, like a deformed arm, and they're not sure if it's from the botched D&E or if they might have accidentally, tore part of his arm or whatever. But the only time a procedure fails, which is really funny, is when the baby lives. That's kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah. And then it was a governor or senator of Vermont where he was talking about if a baby is removed and put on the table and alive, like on the metal tray, then the mother and the doctor would commence a discussion to decide whether or not to kill the baby.
Yeah, that was the current governor of Virginia.
Virginia, sorry, I said Vermont, Virginia. And then a few days, just like a day or a few days later, Nancy Pelosi was pretending that she didn't know anything about it. She's like, I just don't know what he said. I just don't know what he said. As if like she's not keeping up with essential PR matters or something,
The state legislature of New York, when they passed their law in that effect, they literally cheered when they passed it, and Cuomo, governor of New York, signed it into law. They literally cheered.
That's disgusting. Like,
I mean, it's beyond the pale. And
it's all propaganda and brainwashing and desensitizing. It's really bad. Like around my campus, they'll draw on chalk on the ground and say like 85% of women who get abortions are happy. And I'm like, that's a blatant lie. Like it's actually like 99% of them are horrified. They're disgusted. They become drug addicts, manic depressants. Like they have all kinds of problems. And that's not including the women who have just had miscarriages. They have problems. Like there's a huge scientific link, like a mental psychology link to abortion, that it is murder, that it is a moral degradation. What are the words I'm trying to use here? You guys are better at those words. But, you are literally morally degrading yourself by murdering your baby. And that's why these women have all kinds of problems.
Yeah, there's so many negative outcomes. It's disgusting.
It is, and I hate seeing all that propaganda around my campus because it's like, who it actually targets? It actually targets the minority populations. That's because Margaret Sanger wanted to wipe out the Africans that were in America. Was Margaret Sanger right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, you don't see this behind Planned Parenthood. It's a eugenics program. That's exactly what it is.
Yep. This is the I'm about to show. This is the cheer after they pass that law. I find that disgusting.
Now, is that when they
And,
passed the third term, right? Or the
Yeah. This
Okay.
is the New York State Senate just made history and passed the Reproductive Health Act on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade.
wow.
well, I can
And then they
pull
lit
up
up. Then they lit
Trump's
up the.
rebuttal to that he did, and he got a much better cheer than those scumbags got.
Yep.
So,
And there he is signing the law. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, this is only a 2-minute clip, so I'll pull it up and let me get the screen share going. And I also have my own personal anecdote from recently that I want to share next. Because I've been patiently waiting for that opportunity, but we're on important topics, so I'm not trying to like force it in there, but it is on the abortion topic. But here's the video. Do you have it up?
Yep.
Cool. And man, this guy is a creep.
Good old Chucky Schumer, man. He's a snake.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in a mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life.
And they still haven't been able to pass anything, have they? To stop
And let
that?
us reaffirm a fundamental truth.
Sorry.
All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God.
Yeah, I remember when I watched that live, and I got the chills listening to it. But it's what
And
it's
it's awesome that he didn't just let them like do that disgusting thing and cheer and do their pink light and stuff and then not say anything about it, you know?
well, and to
I mean,
call
that was awesome.
And not only did he say something about it, he called them out on arguably one of the highest stages that exists. I mean, the State of the Union, there's not too many bigger stages than that, you know. I mean, especially in terms of American politics, right? I mean, I didn't just hold a press conference. Like I I waited until nobody could escape. I had you all in the same room, and I called you all out for what you are. I mean,
Wasn't that the same one that Nancy Pelosi ripped up the?
oh yeah, she tore up the speech afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a disgusting woman.
Well, and here's to not to go on to a crazy other topic, but I mean, that's why in context of tonight, right? So James ended the whole thing with like, "Who did you vote for?" Or Caleb, I think, kicked that whole thing off, and then they went into this like, "Who'd you vote for?" And it interests me how somebody like even of course, she's a pagan, but the Kay, the anti-abortionist, right? She views Trump as this horrible, person, and I'm like, you're a professional activist against abortion, and you're against the individual in this context, Trump, who has done more. I'm talking from a leadership perspective to publicly call out and stand in favor of pro-life, and you're still against him. Like, are you just ignorant? Or do you buy into the propaganda that's spewed by the media? I'm guessing so.
Well, she's against capital punishment, and she cries if she kills an insect. Like, she's pro-life in kind of an absurd sort of way.
Is she a Jainan? A Jain? What's that religion? The Jain religion? They like won't sweep their floors because they're afraid to kill a bug.
Oh, I don't know about that.
All
I caught was her talking about being a pagan.
Yeah, it really is a religion. I learned about it in my comparative religions class. It doesn't have a big following, because like they won't work the fields, they won't do any of that. I think they're called Jains, Jaina or something like that. It's a real religion, by the way.
Yeah,
but she just sounds like a contradicting fool. Like, I don't get those people. It's kind of like men that are feminists. I'm like, do what now? Like, so you're actively voting for your rights to be taken away as a man. You are contradicting and hypocritical. Brilliant. I mean, I told one guy that, and he just kind of looked at me. I said, "You're stupid." Like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean, but you are dumb for calling yourself a feminist when they want to take your rights away.
Guaranteed he has premature sperm relocation problems.
Oh, Utopia Blaster just corrected me. It's a Jainist. Yeah, I knew somebody knew about that obscure religion. I've taken 2 ancient religion classes, one on Eastern religions and one on comparative religions. And of course, we go into all of them. So I know a plethora of useless information about ancient religions.
SWE, I don't even know how to give that a response.
Well, I mean, there's nothing like that going on during an ultrasound, so it's just a silly trolling thing to say. But Marx called religion the opium of the masses, but then he started his own religion in order to opiate the masses, and we see like what the results of that is now, with a lot of people who are like, "Oh, Biden's not a Marxist, blah blah blah." I mean, he's an obvious Trojan horse. I mean, people are just being really stupid. But and I say that ties together because all this stuff has to be like culturally snuck in and all that. And here's from apparently it was posted November 4th. I think I just saw it yesterday. I'm not going to screen share it because it's on Facebook with people's first and last names and stuff. But it says, stop abortion at the source. Vasectomies are reversible. Make every young man have one. When he's deemed financially and emotionally fit to be a father, it will be reversed. What's that? Did the idea of regulating a man's body make you uncomfortable? Then mind your effing business. And it is funny, but it's a pro-choice thing, saying like, if you don't want to force vasectomies on men, then don't force women to not murder babies. Kind of a weird argument. And 2 of my friends who are mothers, one of which I know was very sad, about a tragic miscarriage not too long ago, but then has had a baby since then. So she has 2 children, one that's about maybe 13 or so, and the other one's, I think, not even a year yet. And another one who has 5 children, and they both liked this. And 2 people loved it with hearts. And then 4 people shared it. And so, well, it says there are no public shares, so that's interesting. They shared it, but they know to be ashamed of sharing it, apparently. But then my comment was regulating a baby's body into, oh, I didn't put the word being here. I better edit it. Into being torn. Oh, no, I wrote it right. Regulating a baby's body into torn apart pieces sure bothers me a whole lot more. What a horrible way to go. And then here's the really weird thing is the guy who posted it, he didn't thumb up the other comments. One of the comments is love it, and another one is actually sounds like a good idea, but vasectomies are not always reversible. And that was a man who said that. Like, and this was getting scary with Marxism, right? Is like, really, if they're not always reversible, but if they were, it would actually be a good idea for the government to get to decide when a man is allowed to procreate. Like, oh, man. But he didn't like either of those 2 comments, but then he liked mine. And it's like, what was he really doing posting this in the first place? And like, it's just kind of confusing. So I don't know. But
you can't try to make sense of the end of, the nonsensical.
Yeah, so this is a regular part of my life, being controversial, even though I think a lot of people they haven't unfriended me too much, but they have stopped following me a lot, I presume. But this is just regular, everyday life for me to speak up like that.
I just don't even get on the social media anymore because, one, they attack me because I'm a Christian. They attack me because I'm pro-life. And they attack me because, I defend men. Like, I posted this picture on Facebook, and it was just like a cartoon picture, but not like super silly cartoon or whatever, and it was a father, and he had his shirt pulled over his head, and he was like making like a tent for his 2 kids in a snowstorm. And it was I forget exactly what the meme said, but it was like a father's love is just as powerful or whatever, because they're always talking about mothers and always leaving out the fathers. I got so much backlash, mostly from women, and all the guys were like, "Thank you, Jesse, for posting this." I'm like, "You're welcome." And I was like, "Love to all the dads out there. Your guys' sacrifice and love is just as important as mom's."
Well,
I can't even imagine what the objection is. Like,
it's just because,
it's the Marxism. It is as simple as that, but it's just so like frustrating. Like,
well, and they try to hide it by like saying like, "Oh, we're not socialists. We're democratic socialists," and I'm like, what are you doing? It's like trying to spray perfume on a casket. Like, it still smells like shit, still smells like shit.
Death. I mean,
Yes.
Death is a good reference because that's what's coming. I mean, they're going to have to murder to achieve their goals. There's no 2 ways about it.
And it's the same thing with like the abortion argument. All they're doing is spraying perfume on something that's a rotting corpse. That's it. That's all they're doing. And the stink is starting to get through because some people are actually starting to wake up to it, that it's a disgusting behavior. And oh my gosh. I didn't even know that there was 500 million. I thought it was only 50 million since Roe versus Wade documented.
Well, I think it's 300 million or so. Or did someone pull up the stat, or was that a reference to what I said earlier?
I think someone mentioned it in the side chat that it was like 500 million. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you think about abortions are being performed all around the world. So it's not
well, you have to think about it. If we're now, if I know from like 2004 to 2010, the estimate per year was like 42 million, between 42 and 46 million a year. And then from 2010 to 2016, the projection was about 52 million a year.
Oh my god!
So you just do that math, and relative decade, you're already at close to 500 million right there. On a global, we're not talking about the United States, we're talking on a global level.
Well, I guess I totally said a wrong statistic earlier, so maybe I just got the 300 number in my head because I compared the number to the 300 number, because 350 or so is about the population of the U.S. Because
Well,
it actually
I
says
think
here on Life News, which is totally on our side, it says 61,628,584 is the estimate
in the you're talking about for the United States.
in the United States. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the abortions. I think if you did very, very low estimates of their offspring, you're very rapidly at 300 million now.
Well, but those are only the recorded ones. That guy that Nicholas showed, that video that he showed, that doctor actually talks about that there are a lot of undocumented ones. Just because it either just didn't get into the records or whatever the case, So these are just the documented ones. That means that there could be a whole heck of a lot that's out there that's, undocumented.
Well, that's very true. But I think we have to think about this also in the the butterfly effect context, right? I mean, we're just referring to this in the last, we're now talking about 50 years, right? So it's conceivable that you have 3, potentially 4, let's say 3 is much more realistic, at least 3 generational cycles inside that 50-year period, right? And so now you extrapolate that out, and that's what I was saying, getting to 300 million in terms of the butterfly effect is not unrealistic just in that time frame, which is why the point I was making earlier about like the minority percentage of population for different groups. And it's like, if we hadn't been having such high levels of abortion, where would they be in terms of like percentage of society? I mean, it's amazing stuff.
Ooh, can I answer SWE really fast?
Sure.
You are absolutely wrong. Abortion is not needed for population control. Do you know that theorists that theorize habitats, like how many elephants can live in so many square acres and all that kind of stuff, they have never been able to come up for a number for a habitat for the world. They can't agree on it. So absolutely not. And these are environmental scientists that do this stuff on a daily basis. They know how many animals can live in, so many acres and all that kind of stuff before they start dying them off. That's the reason why we have tags, why hunters have tags. But for the world, for humans, they have not been able to calculate it. They don't know if it's 15 billion. They don't know if it's 30 billion. They have no idea. So that's actually that's a terrible argument.
Well, one of the things that really gets me about the whole population control argument, and this also correlates with climate change, but that's a whole other topic, is this just signifies the stunning ignorance of the average human. Okay, so this is from 2016. 50% of the world's population lives on 1% of its land. And again, you have to think about that in that context. Just look at this, right? Look at the map. Is that showing up on y'all's end?
It's showing up in StreamYard, but not on the main one yet.
It should be. Yeah, okay, so with the yellow you're seeing in the map with the purple background, that's where the population is. The rest of it's dark.
Crazy, isn't it?
So now the point I was making was that we're talking about 1%, 50% of the world's population lives in 1% of the surface area of the land, but that only makes up about 24% of the total surface area of the planet, right? Anyway, very long story short, what the math actually extrapolates out to is almost all of the world's population lives on like 0.03% of the surface area of the planet. And yet we're told that we have an overpopulation problem.
Yeah, it's a total lie.
It's like we don't even, like, people don't even know what they're talking about. And if you live, however, if you live in a New York, if you're in America, for example, if you live in New York City, your bubble is massively overpopulated. I completely agree. Your microcosm is overpopulated. These, like, case in point. So Manhattan, New York City proper, and the boroughs is like 500 and something square miles. Davidson County, where I live in Tennessee, is 526 square miles. We've got 678,000 people, give or take a few thousand, living in the same surface area as 13 million. I mean, it's like, you think about that in context of like the stark dichotomy between the two.
Well, and have you ever paid attention when you're in an airplane how much empty land is down there? Like it's pretty amazing when you see lights. Like my geography teacher was showing us a the stark difference between North and South Korea. You know, like this is a socialist, fascist whatever country, a communist country versus a non-communist country, and it was a satellite photo of the lights. Like there's hardly any lights in North Korea. And there's all these kind of lights, but still they were still very sparse. And we looked at population maps because it was cultural geography or whatever, So we were talking about people and demographics and where they live, the land, all the different names of the type of land. And he is actually the one that told us that in the class, is that they have never actually been able to come up with a population of how much the world can actually hold population wise. They don't know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. Here's a picture of what you're talking about there with the Koreas. The Koreas at night.
The Koreas at night.
That let's see if I can zoom in here. So that dark spot, you think it might be like ocean. Nope. It's North Korea. Is that coming? How's that zoom working? It always messes up when I'm trying to zoom in. What's going on here?
Looks like it's frozen, maybe.
Huh. Well, whatever. Can y'all see my mouse? My mouse coming through on the screen?
Yeah, on screen right. So it'll go through on the other one in a minute.
Okay, so what's circling around on there? That's North Korea.
Right. That's what he showed us.
Here's South Korea. There's China. That's North Korea. And here's the irony, is that from a population perspective, North Korea has like 4 times as many people as South Korea. Isn't that ironic?
Mm-hmm. Well, then,
is that a curfew matter, basically? That curfew is so strict that there's no lights?
Well, I'm actually not entirely sure. It might just be regulations of, because everything's paid by the government because it's a socialist country, so they might have regulations on how long you can use the lights or whatever. I don't actually know.
Something's going on. It's interesting.
But what the other thing is about that whole like rural population thing that SWE brought up was, and I wonder if you would know this, Nicholas, is how high did the abortion spike in China when they had the one-child policy?
Oh, no, I don't know that. I did sign up, but I've been pretty busy and haven't gotten a good start yet for I should offer this link for everyone. I just got an email from them today. End abortion now. So this is what's it? Jeff Durbin? Yeah, Jeff Durbin is big into promoting this. So yeah, let me get on there and get the link for you guys.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sure that number is massive.
Oh, yeah, because when the sex trade went up big time too, because the girls when they were born were being sold because girls were undesirable, and it was a massive problem. And it's like, and
the ultimate irony is that now China is having to import women.
Right? Yes, because they don't have enough men.
No, they don't have enough women. They have too many
that's
men.
what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, they don't have enough women. Yeah, and it's just like, you've got to be kidding me, because you know what? If they would stop being greedy and just after industry and like destroying their entire environment over there, because they actually have pretty bad environmental problems over there. the Olympics in 2004. When was the Olympics in Beijing?
No, I was like, that was 20. I don't know. Let's find out. When was Beijing Olympics?
Yeah. Did you know that they actually had to shut all their industries off for like
Oh,
3
yeah.
because
Oh,
the
yeah.
athletes were complaining. Did you also know that the rivers in China, 70% of their river systems are polluted to the point of being almost completely toxic?
I believe that. It was 2008.
Oh, 2008. Okay. Yeah. And so if they hadn't gone so much after industry and trying to make money, they could have actually found a way to have enough room for people out in the country and all that kind of stuff. Like it's absolutely plausible, but nope, they were all about money.
Well, China's a case in point to my point about overpopulation in the microcosm of, like, let's look it up real quick. It was a couple years ago I looked this up. Let's see what it is. Metro population of Shanghai, just for fun. Let's see what it is. It's something ridiculous. Yeah, 34 million people.
Isn't that near New York, right?
Huh? Shanghai?
Yeah, I think New York is like 30 million or something.
No. New York maybe like 21 million. Let's see.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, in the United States, New York is gigantic. In the world, nothing. Let's see. New York City. I want metro population. Like New York itself is 8 million. Let's see. Where's the metro population? Like the metro, like includes parts of Jersey and stuff. Let's see. Anyway, I'm going back to China real quick. So you've got to get into the surface area. Okay, so you got like Beijing, 24 million. Like so, Shanghai, 34 million. Beijing, 24. Shenzhen, 23. Guangzhou, something I can't pronounce, 25 million, right? Okay, so let's see. What is the surface area of Shanghai? So 2,448 miles. Okay, 34 million people. Okay, let's think about this. Actually, you know what? 2,400 square miles. That's extraordinarily close to Delaware, I believe. Let's see. Surface area of Delaware is 2,489. Man, I'm good. Okay, so Shanghai, 2,448 miles. Delaware, 2,489 miles. Okay, so almost exactly the same size, right? You've got 34 million people in Shanghai, and let's see what the population of Delaware is. It's like right at 1 million, I believe. Let's see, population of Delaware, 973,000 people live in Delaware. 34 million live in Shanghai. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
That's nuts when you think about this, right? I mean, I don't think.
Well, that would be 1 in 10 people in the United States all crammed into Delaware.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I say in like the context of like overpopulation, people living in like Western society are idiots if they think that, like, I'm talking about our parts of the world are overpopulated. If like we consider New York, from our perspective, New York is ridiculously overpopulated, right? And just like everybody's crammed in there. But in comparison to these other places around the world, it's like you're out in the countryside. Like in terms of like the comparative aspect of population density. There's some spot in India where, like, if you had the same level, I forget what the exact name of it is, but if you had the same level of population density as this like subsection of a city, this one city in a giant metro area in India, it's like you could fit the entire population of the planet into like Rhode Island or something if you had the same level of density as what's going on in this metro area of India that has like 40 million people living in it. It's nuts.
Well, that's a huge metro area too. I mean, just geographically, that's huge. It's like from Sacramento to San Francisco. And that might not mean much to a lot of people, but I mean, it's a long ways to just be one solid huge city.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, yes, it's huge. What was the? Sorry, you said San Francisco to what?
To Sacramento.
Okay, yeah. That's probably about right. Yeah.
Yes, but yeah. I used my I brought up a map and put my thumb over Delaware, and then put my thumb over an area I'm familiar with, so that I could see what kind of size it is in real life. Like to me, and I'm
Yep.
like, wow, because I've made that drive plenty of times, and
Well, and the crazy
just
part,
imagine skyscraper after skyscraper that whole way.
Yep. I mean, it's like thinking about like LA. Like from our perspective, LA just keeps going and going, and the metro area of LA, right, just keeps going and going. But like that's traffic just sucks so bad. It's like, oh yeah, we went like 30 miles. From our perspective, like it keeps going and going and going, right? From our perspective, and it's like, yeah, try tacking on another 100.
Well, and I think people forget perspective sometime. That's why I did that ancient structures video, because you see a picture of it, right? You see a picture of like the pyramids or something like that, and you're like, oh, it's not really that big, until you see a drone video, and you're like, okay, that's a lot bigger than I thought it was. And so when you're looking like at your state or at your cities, or looking at like how big Shanghai is or something like that, and you actually take out, like, Google actually has a measuring tool now. It's pretty neat. I don't know if you guys know that, but you can measure direct points. So I thought that was kind of neat, and so you can measure like directly across the city instead of taking like a road system or doing directions or whatever. And then you get a perspective, and you're like, wow, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was, or maybe not as big as I thought it was. Like Denver's not that big. It seems big because traffic is terrible.
Yeah, well, when you really think about like the whole the saying as the crow flies, the bird flies, whatever, the point you're making is so relevant, and it's why in relation to aerial transport technologies that are becoming closer and closer to viable, the entire premise of pushing for urban density is stupid. And I think, COVID's going to accelerate this whole reality. But you think about it, if aerial transport technologies get to the point where, like, hey, I can go live in a neighborhood that's 40 miles away from the metro, and I can hop in a freaking flying taxi and zip into town, and it takes 20 minutes. Or I can live 10 miles away from my office, but then I have to drive and it takes me an hour. Which one are you going to do?
The one that's quicker.
I'm going to do the one that's quicker and that costs me less and has less stress. Those different factors, right? Like, wait a minute. So I can spend $350,000 and live in a 3,000 square foot house on 2 acres, out in the country and having a great old time and relax. Or I can spend $600,000 to live in a 2,200 square foot house on a half acre in a metro area. Like, what? No, peace out, y'all. Later.
I'm gone. Well, you know what? It kills me too is that there was one point when I was working at an auto body shop, and I was driving 80 miles a day, 41 miles there, 41 miles back. So it was technically 82. And I spent so much time on the road that when I would get home, I wouldn't want to do anything else, because one, I'd already just got done working an 8 to 9 hour day, and then driving an hour and a half to sometimes 2 hours, depending on, and it just took up so much of my time. I had to wake up exceedingly early just to make sure that I wouldn't be late for work. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. Like, now I refuse to commute. Like, I was actually kind of glad when the COVID thing happened, because I live 30 miles from my campus. And, the guys are always like, come and hang out with us. I was like, no, I'm not going to drive down there and drive 60 miles there and back just to have a beer with you guys. No, I'm not going to do that. It's like 3-4 hours out of my time because of Denver traffic, because our transit system is terrible in Denver. We have like the worst transit system, but.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I'm very aware of how crappy your system is. When I ran a political action committee here in Nashville against freaking trains, and expansion of urban transit, it drew. The reason I know about Denver is the little idiots here in Nashville kept trying to use Denver as an example of what we wanted to follow. Denver and Seattle. And I'm like, they're literally hemorrhaging ridership because it sucks. Like I dove into the research and the data and all this other kind of stuff, and I'm like, you guys are literally coming in here as supposed experts, trying to convince us that we need to copy these other metro area, comparable metro areas, and it's like their ridership is tanking. It's tanking, and you want us to build something that is sucking in other places. Am I understanding you correctly? Like, this is ridiculous. Oh no, they're like, it's positive there. I'm like, yeah. And then of course, everybody I talk to that lives there confirms it. Like, you didn't know that I had that background, right? It's like, you're like, oh yeah, it sucks, it's horrible. No, we're not going to use it. And it's like, yeah.
So when you're doing your research, did you ever come up with? Did you know that we're like in the top 13 of all the cities in the United States for traffic deaths? We have 536. Yeah, it's on our stupid signs because our traffic is so terrible. Like, literally, you have to leave before 6 a.m. and you cannot stop, or you cannot like leave work or whatever. Basically, traffic kind of clears up at about 8 p.m. And I am not kidding you. I'm not exaggerating. You can go out any time of the day, and no matter what, you are going to be hitting 20, 30 mile an hour traffic. It's insane. And I think we almost peaked to 600 traffic deaths, and almost all of them are related to our mass traffic problems. It's ridiculous.
Man, when I was in Denver, that was probably 23 years ago or something, and it was not that bad of traffic at all, as I remember.
It was it was good until about 6 years ago, whenever the marijuana laws were put in and we had a mass amount of people moving here in industry. That's what hurt us.
But okay, I'm really tired. You guys might have heard me yawning as I spoke just now, so I'm gonna go. But
actually, as I'm somehow getting yawn contagion across YouTube, it's actually, I just realized it is 1:20 a.m. I need to go to sleep.
Yeah, but we went really thorough on that topic for like 3 hours straight, so a good night's work. I feel good about that.
I would agree with that. Well, everybody, you guys, before I'm gonna call it a night. Everybody want to have last words before we close up? Nicholas, you want to go first?
Yeah, just trust Messiah.
Awesome, much agreed. Jesse, you got anything you want to close out with?
I'm glad I was able to come in and talk from a woman's perspective, because I did have someone mention on my channel, on my feminism debate, he's like, I feel like I can't even talk about abortion because I'm a man. And I'm like, that's really sad, because, you actually have like 50% of the right anyways, but I'm just glad that there's a woman's perspective in it, and, and it helps you guys keep up the good fight.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Same to you. Well, everybody, appreciate y'all hanging out with us through all of the crazy madness. Can't believe I had a microphone issue to start this off, but we got it all working. Many thanks to Nicholas for keeping things going while I figured out what the heck was happening with my microphone. Tomorrow, go over on MDD, myself and the Smoky Saint are taking on James W. and Amy on Is Christianity Reasonable? That should be a I'm sure that will be interesting. Obviously make sure you go and support all the members of the community and help us spread the word. If you have friends that you think need to be challenged on some of their different positions, or just are unwilling to think about things beyond the surface level, make sure you send them to the appropriate avenues and aspects of the community, to people who are the best at tackling some of the different talking points, whatever their particular focus is. And as I always like to say, as you consider the things that are relevant to your existence, make sure that all these things you contemplate and the conclusions that you reach are ultimately logical, plausible, and probable. Have a great night, y'all, and keep the faith.